Hi, I'm Ben.
And I'm Josh.
And this is the Bad at Magic podcast, a podcast about games, life, and other things. And welcome to episode 74.
Ben, without divulging any top secret information, what do you know about Project Thor?
Okay, I can't divulge any top secret information because I don't know anything about it.
Perfect. Okay, so Project Thor was this think tanky idea that the Air Force had back in like the 60s and the 70s when all the crazy military ideas were coming about.
Well, hang on. But you can't divulge top secret information from the 60s unless it's still active because stuff gets declassified after 25 years.
Well, I guess it's probably not top secret then.
All right.
Any new iteration of it would be top secret. Anyway, ruining my bit, the Project Thor was this idea where in 1967 there was this treaty that like 107 different countries signed saying that they would not take any chemical, biological, or nuclear weapon into space. They would not weaponize space.
Ooh.
But then Air Force found a loophole through that. It's like, well, what if we just put some big old hardcore kinetic weapons that don't actually have any propellant or explosive yields? They're just giant heavy things that we would drop from space. And so they had this idea of taking telephone pole-sized rods of tungsten and dropping...
Telephone pole size?
20 feet long, 1 foot wide in diameter.
Holy crap.
They would drop them from orbit, and by the time they hit the Earth, they would be going 10 times the speed of sound, and they estimated that they would have a yield somewhere in the order of a small nuclear weapon, and they would penetrate some stupid amount into the ground. And that was the idea, is they were going to use it for hardened sites like enemy state nuclear silos and stuff like that.
Wow, but with no pesky nuclear fallout.
Exactly. No fallout, like very little collateral damage as long as you could figure out how to steer a rod of tungsten. And the reason that they were using tungsten, and also ultimately it was the death of the project, only tungsten would work because of the materials science that was involved, because tungsten has a stupid high melting point, something like 6,000 degrees Fahrenheit or some nonsense. And it's also incredibly heavy. And so it was going to cost on the order of like $250 million to get one of these rods into orbit. And so
that's a good example of the kinds of tensions that exist sometimes. Like go ahead.
So I was going to tie it back into 74. And tungsten, the atomic number of tungsten is 74. And that was the coolest fact that I could find about tungsten.
Awesome. Cool. Well, Element 74, Episode 74. I love it. I was just going to say that sometimes when we're trying to innovate, we run into these things that become the tensions. Like in our attempts to create cold fusion, if that weren't ever an oxymoron, the hardest part about it is that it creates so much energy, which is exactly the reason we want to do it, that we can't contain it. And with tungsten, it's the properties of that material are exactly what we need because it's heavy. Well, that also makes it hard to get into space.
This material is absolutely perfect for all the reasons, and it's the worst material we could pick for all the same reasons.
Okay, so I don't know anything about it, but look me in the eye, Josh, and tell me that you think we don't have this.
So here's the thing: is I've heard about this. It's not the first time I've ever heard about Project Thor, and my brain always pauses at the idea of taking a completely dumb kinetic, just basically dropping rocks from orbit.
Yeah.
With any kind of accuracy.
Why?
That's where I start to stumble. Like how, dude, wind, weather. There's a typhoon. How do you plan for that? There's a lot of atmosphere between where you're dropping it from and where you're trying to drop it to.
But if it's traveling at 15,000 miles an hour or whatever it is, it's not going to be really subject to those things. You just need to be really accurate in the very first few kilometers of deorbiting this piece of space junk, and then let gravity and physics do the rest.
Okay.
And all those things that you said are I'm sure rounding errors.
Well, let's say that this weapon, when you dropped it, would stay on course and would only deviate by 0.001 degrees every mile or something. How many miles are between its drop point and its target? So
but that's what I'm saying. I don't think I think we're talking like on the order of multiple zeros there. 10 zeros, 0.0000001.
I don't have as much faith in the kind of procurement for materials that the Air Force has than you do.
You're right. This gets into areas that I know stuff that I can't talk about.
Nice.
Okay. So last episode at 73, you and I talked about the movies that made us. But before we got into that, we did a bit of current events, and you and I kind of delved into our opinions regarding mass shootings in America. And got a bit emotional, and I wouldn't say heated, but definitely I came away with it with a bit of frustration. And I listened to it again. I got to say, Josh, you changed my mind a little bit about a few things. But I realized I didn't have the clarity that I wanted to have when I was talking to you. And I want to share with you a parable I heard as a kid that I think is really the bottom line.
Well, hey, wait a second. Before you get this in here, I just want to point out that it is totally unfair that you're going to ambush me like this 2 weeks after the fact without letting me know that we were going to talk about gun control again. So here I am unprepared. Well, you've had 2 weeks to lock and load your either counter arguments, your explanation, or whatever.
I would say that would be true if that's what I was doing, but that's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to clarify something I'd said, and I heard us make this same kind of argument about 4 different times where you would say, yeah, but if we're going to change this, it has to be enough that it's visible. And we can't do that because of these limitations. And I'm like, well, we can change it enough that it will save a life, and that's important. You're like, how do you even know that? So we kind of went back and forth a few times, and I realized why there was a discrepancy. And it comes from my philosophy that was derived from this parable I heard as a kid. So I'm just going to read it to you. It's adapted from the Star Thor by Lauren Isley, who died back the year I was born. And I heard it probably across the pulpit in church. One day, the old man was walking along a beach that was littered with thousands of starfish that had been washed ashore by the high tide. As he walked, he came upon a young boy who was eagerly throwing the starfish back into the ocean, one by one. Puzzled, the man looked at the boy and asked what he was doing. The young boy paused, looked up, and replied, "Throwing starfish into the ocean. The tide has washed them onto the beach, and they can't return to the sea by themselves." The boy replied, "When the sun gets high, they will die unless I throw them back into the water." The old man replied, "But there must be tens of thousands of starfish on this beach. I'm afraid you won't really be able to make much of a difference." The boy bent down, picked up another starfish, and threw it as far as he could into the ocean. Then he turned and smiled and said, "Made a difference to that one."
Okay, so you're talking about saving a life. Like, in any effort that it takes to save a life, yes, it seems futile in the aggregate, but to the life that you save, it is not futile. I understand this. The argument that I was making for gun control would be like stopping the freaking tide in the first place, Ben.
Right. I get it. I don't think we can devalue the contribution, the saving of a life, or the contribution of an individual. Now imagine a beach filled with people all throwing starfish back into the ocean. Whatever that looks like in this thing. I don't know what that looks like. But I think everybody should try to do something.
I think the biggest difference when we had this discussion 2 weeks ago was that you're coming at it from a perspective of you just want to maximize the amount of help that is done to people. You are so people focused and so agency focused. Like, what are the things that we can do to make even incremental improvements, because that's worth doing.
Yes.
I'm coming at it from this is a bad thing to say, but I'm not looking at it at the people. I'm looking at it as a math problem. I'm looking at it as a spreadsheet. And I'm saying, okay, these are the input factors to this equation.
Right. And the single biggest input factor is this thing.
Yes.
By an order of magnitude.
Yeah, by ridiculous orders of magnitude, which means that our focus should be adjusting this one. Everything else it's not nothing, but it is, like we're talking about, orders of magnitude less effective.
So there's another philosophy that I subscribe to that sometimes conflicts with what I just told you, and that is sometimes I think trying to do little things actually distract and deviate effort that could otherwise be put on the most important thing.
I kind of tried to make that point at one.
Okay,
I
agree with that.
Yeah,
but I also think there's a logical fallacy where people say, well, if you're doing this one thing, you can't be doing another thing. We can do multiple things.
We could, if politicians wouldn't go and say, "Oh, well, we're not going to do gun control because look at all these other wonderful programs that we're putting into place," which makes
so as long as we
necessary.
reject that logical fallacy where they're saying that we don't need to do gun control, I think we can still do those other things.
Yes, but we're not the ones that get to hold their coals to the fire or their feet to the fire when it comes to stuff like that. They're the ones that think, "Oh, my optics are good enough now; I can move on to a new subject."
Okay. All right. I think we can move on from that.
Any politicians listening to the podcast, seriously, do something.
I love this bit. Dear Tom Cruise. Okay, so last time you described the movie Varsity Blues, which you and talked about the formative effect that had on your childhood.
Did you watch Varsity Blues?
No, I did not watch Varsity
Blues.
I may have watched a few scenes on YouTube. Like there was a scene where he's fighting with his coach about following the plays or not. Maybe we'll talk about him later on when we talk about The Color Pie. Anyway, while I was listening to you describe your experience with that, you talked about your high school experience, and you said something I'd never really processed before. You said, quote, "I played sports, but I hung out with the nerds." And when I listened to it again, I'm like, how did that work? How did you do that? How were you on the football team but hang out with the nerds? What was the logistics of that? How did that happen?
It was easy. Like during school, like the most of your day when you get up and go to school, I spent all day with the same group of people. It was the same, like 20 of us that just, they should have moved the teachers. It would have been logistically easier, but we just went from one classroom to the next all together as a group because we were all in the same, the highest tier classes that they offered at the high school. And then at the end of the day, I went to football practice, or I went to wrestling practice, or I went to track practice, and I did the practices. But when it came to like weekends or hanging out or going places with people, I was hanging out with like the nerd people. I wasn't like seeking out the other football guys. Like we never had any classes together. Like we barely knew each other. I barely knew the names of everybody that was on the teams that I was on.
Oh, okay. So it was because you were in like the AP classes and stuff.
Yeah. We just never interacted.
Huh. Well, but on the other hand, you may only be in a class with one or two nerds, but then after school practice is what, like 2 or 3 hours?
Yeah, a couple hours.
I mean, it just seems like naturally people fall into those cliques because friendships are based on common experience. So why didn't the athletic experience and the team building kind of impact those have on your life have a more weighty effect on you than your classmates in your geek classes?
Man, I don't know. That's a question for the ages. I'm an introverted person. Like I was friends with, don't get me wrong, I was friends with the people that were on these teams, and I talked to them. And sometimes there's a couple people from the wrestling team. On Saturdays we would go run up one of the mountains in South Mountain Park in Estrella in Arizona. And it was fun, and that was something we did for athletics, but that was the extent of our hanging out. I tried as a senior to go to one of the killer parties, like all these high school movies. There's the one kid whose dad like bankrolls his social life. We had one of those, and I tried to go to one of his parties where they had like this suite at a hotel, and there was like at least 60 people there. But when I showed up, apparently they had not gotten any of the alcohol yet. And so it was 60 people like kind of milling around, not really doing anything. And I stayed there for like 20 minutes and looked at my best friend at the time and was like, this is lame. And we bounced. And then apparently 20 minutes after that, they showed up with the kegs and the party like erupted. So that was the one chance I had to go to a real high school party like in Varsity Blues. And I lost it because I was impatient.
All right. Well, good job bucking the norm of because you're on the football team, you're friends with the jocks. So well done crossing the boundaries that our society tends to place on people.
On the flip side of the coin, when me and my nerd friends were on the Quiz Bowl team and went to the other like traveling Quiz Bowl competitions, I was the only one there in a Letterman's jacket that had sports letters on it.
Oh man, that just made like a million high school movies flash through my head, like the Spider-Man Homecoming where he's on the Quiz Bowl team and balancing it with saving the world. Okay, I got it. That makes more sense now. Now, there was something I said that maybe didn't confuse you, but you brought up something that you know about me, and then I kind of coyly didn't tell the entire story. So I think I need to do that now.
You're talking about the headshot of Alicia Silverstone.
Yes. And I didn't give details, but this is a black and white, like publicity photo, glamour shot of Alicia Silverstone from 1995 that said, to Ben Hart, Alicia Silverstone. So if that clears that up for whoever asked if it was personalized, yes, it was personalized. Did I meet her in person? I did not.
By correspondence only.
I procured these souvenirs via correspondence, which means I was somewhat persistent in my fan-based correspondence. This was a pretty severe crush.
How many letters do you have to write to a celebrity before you finally get through to their personal assistant to get a headshot?
Apparently that just kind of triggers a process if they have a publicist, and like they just send you one, because I ended up with two of them, and one of them had my full name Benjamin, and the other one just had the shortened name Ben. But I ended up with two of these. Same headshot.
You have two of them, and they're both personalized? What did you do with the other one?
Okay, have is a strong word, Josh. So let's go there, and that's the other part of this.
Okay, listeners, he's saying have is a strong word. I see them both framed on the wall behind him.
I don't even know what to say to that, because I like the yes and rules of improv, and that was a very funny thing you said. But I need to I have to go for the truth here, Josh.
It's not actually on the walls. What I just said was a total lie, but it was really funny.
So early on in a marriage, when you merge two people's lives, you might have the kind of conflict where like you both own a coffee table, and you just kind of stand there with your hands on your hips and look at the two of them and pick the better one and throw the other one out, right?
Yes.
So there's also the like, all right, at some point you end up going through each other's like memory box, and you see pictures of them with their ex-boyfriend/girlfriend, and you have to form feelings and opinions about these kinds of things.
Okay.
I don't know if I feel like there isn't really a standard, like what is considered to be the norm for this. Like when you get married, do you go back and kind of purge your past of things that remind you of other romantic partners? I mean, they at the very least, take a role of less prominence in your life.
So I'm confused because you didn't have any romantic partners, like per se, before you got married, and I'm assuming the same is true for your spouse.
We both had boyfriends and girlfriends in high school and college before we met each other.
Did you though, Ben? Did you though?
Yeah. I mean, that was
a long pause, sir. That was 3 full seconds of silence.
Well, I was thinking if I just wanted to let you have that one and be like, well, because I didn't have sex with anyone else, that means we weren't really, that our romance wasn't really serious, that we didn't really intertwine our lives or think about our futures together.
Okay, I'll stop busting your chops, and I will answer your question instead. So in my life, when me and Nicole merged our lives together, all of my furniture was thrown away and burned. And I'm pretty sure
it was just default to her.
I think she went and made sure that the ashes were taken out of state.
Right.
So my furniture was terrible. It was bachelor stuff. And as far as ex-boyfriends and ex-girlfriends go, that doesn't bother me. Like, she has a past, and she had whatever she did in her past is whatever. And she's shared a lot of it with me, and I've shared a lot of mine with hers. I still have pictures with my ex-girlfriends, and she still has pictures with some of the guys that she dated in high school and college. I think we purged all of the like adult-rated material that we had of the other partner. That's one of those kind of Mexican standoff things. It's like, did you get rid of all the smut from your ex-girlfriends? Did you get rid of all the smut from your ex-boyfriends? And you both kind of squint at each other and say yes slowly at the same time.
Yeah, that's kind of the question. So you can just imagine that template that you just gave, and you can escalate it a little higher, a little lower based on how you'd lived your life, but it still follows the same kind of script.
Okay, yeah.
At some point, we were sitting there together looking through a box of things, and I was leafing through a photo album with pictures of her sitting on her old boyfriend's laps, and she was like pulled out the autographed photos of Elisa Silverstone and goes, "What is this?"
This is a crush that I had. Like, that's no different than having like an NSYNC poster on the wall.
I know. And, you could have an alternate universe where this conversation goes any of a million different ways. But the way it happened to go for me was, okay, I want to tell another story.
Oh, bookmark. We'll come back.
Feeds into this.
Tangent. Here we go.
So when I was a full-time missionary, you just have a bunch of keepsakes that you kind of carry along with it. They have to be small. But I'd come from Chicago at the time, and it was right in the middle of like the Michael Jordan Chicago Bulls era, where they were they were in the middle of their second three-peat as NBA champions. And I was a big fan, and I brought with me a Michael Jordan jersey. And whenever you move as a missionary every 3 to 6 months, and whenever I moved to a new apartment, I'd pull out my Michael Jordan jersey and tack it up on the wall like you would in a dorm room or something like that. And I didn't really think anything of it. It was just like a little keepsake that reminded me of home. I didn't even have time to watch the games, even though the Bulls were winning more championships while I was a missionary from 96 to 98. I was kind of vaguely aware of it, but I wasn't watching it. And I remember one time a member of the church had come over to our house to pick us up and give us a ride somewhere. And he said, "Hey, what's that on the wall?" It's like, "Oh, I'm from Chicago. I'm a Bulls fan." He's like, "That's great, but aren't you supposed to be focused on the work that you're doing here? On teaching people about Christ."
Oh, thanks, nerd. Way to kill the mood.
Well, I could be belligerent about it and be like, "Buddy, I can do whatever I want." But I kind of looked at it and I thought, that feels like the next level for me. Is just accepting that feedback from this member, taking down my Michael Jordan jersey, putting up a picture of Jesus, and thinking more about what I'm doing.
Wow, he called you out on the First Amendment, the first commandment.
Yeah. Exactly. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy mind, with all thy soul. So, I thought I was humble enough that I accepted that feedback, and I was like, you know what? Okay. And I took down my Jordan jersey, I stuck it in my suitcase, and I never hung it up again the rest of my mission. And I felt like that was a meaningful sacrifice that I placed on the altar that I felt like brought blessings to me. So, fast forward to this moment where my wife and I are looking through our memory boxes, and I pull out my photos of Alicia Silverstone. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I'm throwing up my timeout hands because the next time you tell this story, Ben, promise me you change these subtle details to make it so much funnier. The guy came in and saw my Bulls jersey. He's like, "Is that right? Shouldn't you be a little more focused on some of your other things that you should be focused on, Elder Rich? And you should look at the Bulls jersey and say, you know what? You're absolutely right." And then take the Bulls jersey down and replace it with the headshot of Alicia Silverstone.
Yeah, so I did have those before my mission, but I did not bring those with me on my mission. Anyway, they were still in a box when I got home, and I got them out, and the crush had diminished, but she's still very attractive, and they were kind of a fond keepsake for me. It wasn't a lot. I had a lot of photos of her, most of which I'd gotten away, but I'd kept this one thing.
Ben, you're sounding defensive. I have no fewer than 5 posters of Scarlett Johansson in the room that I am sitting in. So, I totally get it.
Yeah, but you're forgetting the fact that I'm not feeling defensive about you.
Right, it's the other Alicia in your life that's gonna get a little jealous.
Okay, so we had this moment when we came across this photo of a woman that I was keeping because she was beautiful, and it was personalized and addressed to me, even though she doesn't know me from Adam. And my wife kind of looked at me and said graciously, but a bit trepidatiously, "Well, shouldn't you get rid of that?" And like you said, it was the Mexican standoff thing. It was the same template that you gave, the same script for this interaction between two people. And I kind of reflected on the thing with the Bulls jersey, and I was like, do I want to take my marriage to the next level? Like, is this a sacrifice I'm willing to place on the altar?
So you told her, yes, I will get rid of the signed picture of Alicia Silverstone, and then you got rid of one of them, so you're technically telling the truth and kept the other in secret.
Yeah, we talked about that too. So I got rid of them. So I don't have them anymore.
Oh.
So listener who asked about this, yes, it was personalized, and no, I don't have it anymore. I threw it away.
Ben. Alicia Silverstone, if you're a listener, first of all, sponsor the podcast. Second, we need a new signed headshot.
I think Alicia Silverstone would only sponsor the podcast if we were vegan.
Is she vegan?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, look up her PETA ad. Listeners, don't look up her PETA ad.
All right, so you married a woman named Alicia. You had a crush on Alicia Silverstone. Are there any other Alicias in your life that you want to go ahead and confess to having a crush on?
None kind of maybe immediately to mind, but every time you bring this up, it seems like there's more. So I don't know.
Are there more wives or are there more Alicias?
And with that, we shall move on. All right, Josh. So because of the shootings last week, I kind of got distracted from a story I wanted to tell you that happened a couple of weeks ago. So you know that my wife and I went and visited my son who's in college in Utah because they just had a brand new baby. I'm now a grandfather. We talked about that already.
Mazel tov.
What I didn't tell you about was what happened after we came back. So while we were on our way, it was like the day before we came back from Utah, my in-laws, who are in their 70s and 80s had come to stay at my house with my kids. Not because my kids really need someone, but it was just a good opportunity and they get to spend some time with the kids. So they'd come and they were staying in my house, and they have a family, their daughter and her husband live in their house with them. And while they were away, those people in their home back in Illinois caught COVID.
Oh, no. And
my in-laws haven't had it, and they're of, well stricken with years, and it would definitely have been ill-advised for them to go back home while everyone's infected with COVID.
Right. Just asking for it at that point.
They canceled their return flight and looked at their options for telecommuting to work and stuff because they'd only taken a week off. And my wife said, well, school gets out in 4 more days. How about we just take a road trip and drive you guys back home? And they thought, sounds like a good plan. Everybody agreed, and that was the plan. Until the day before school gets out, my 20-year-old son was taking my 6-year-old son to a church youth group activity and made a poor judgment call and crashed our 8-passenger minivan.
Oh, Ben, you have another car that was wrecked by a kid?
Third wrecked car in as many years.
Oh, Ben.
Now, one thing I want to say in favor of minivans is that they're very safe to get in accidents in.
Well, it's because they're never going more than 45 miles an hour.
Yeah, I'll put a photo in the show notes. This one wasn't going that fast. It was wrecked enough that you couldn't drive it, but it didn't deploy the airbags. No one was injured in either vehicle.
Now, we got a complete, I feel like I could draw the scene from the last 2 wrecks that we had, based on your description of exactly the logistics of how it went down. Are we going to get the play-by-play snapshot for this one?
This one isn't that interesting. It was just an ill-advised left turn with bad timing.
I feel like when your daughter wrecked the car, you made it very clear exactly how she wrecked the car. And your son wrecks the car, is like, oh, no, it's fine. He just didn't turn it correctly.
All right. If you're asking for a full description in the name of gender equality, I will give it.
No, I'm just using gender equality as a lever.
He'd come to an intersection on a 4-lane road that had a center lane for left turns, and it was the kind where it has a dedicated left arrow that then changes to green, and then you have to yield to oncoming traffic. So he was in the left turn lane. There was oncoming traffic. He didn't wait long enough before he started to go, and he crashed into the back of their car as they were going past.
Wow, he clipped the back of a car as he was turning left?
Yes.
That's aggressive, man.
It was just bad timing.
Was he trying to thread the needle between? Was there another car coming?
I guess. Yeah, I don't know the full details. He slowed down enough and then tried to go and went too soon and crashed into their rear quarter panel.
Who did he? What kind of car did he crash into?
It was a Dodge Charger, cherry red, souped up engine.
Oh,
It was an Airman.
Even worse.
Yeah, it was somebody from the base. So he called us and told us, and my in-laws were in the car with me. And so the whole way there, their travel plans are disintegrating before their face.
Oh, so the talking to then, like how hard did the hammer fall? Are we talking like a light tap of, hey, do better next time? Or are we talking Project Thor, where there's now a crater where your son was standing on the side of the road?
Josh, you've been through this with me twice before. Which of those do you think it was?
It was the slap on the wrist and more of the sighing and passive-aggressive, like, well, there's a bunch of work for me to do now because somebody wrecked the car.
I wouldn't even say it was that much. It was just like, oh, man, that sucks. I'm sorry. I'm glad you guys are okay. Let's deal with this and get through it. So it caused all the chaos of the travel plan. So then my in-laws were stranded here. They started shopping for flights because they knew we wouldn't be able to drive them back. And it was like twice what it was before. So they ended up getting tickets out of Dallas, and I had to do a 6-hour road trip to take them to Dallas-Fort Worth Airport.
So you're garnishing your son's wages for the price of the flights that they had to get at the last minute and for the repairs to the minivan, I'm assuming.
You're describing a family culture that's just so utterly foreign to my family and my wife's family.
Dude, you messed up. Like, you made a mistake, which is fine. You learn from mistakes, but there should also be negative consequences to reinforce said lessons.
I agree with that, but there's all kinds of negative consequences.
What happened? What is the most negative thing that happened to this poor boy after he clipped a car? If you say he feels really bad about it, that's not good enough.
Why? Why isn't that good enough?
That's not like he's got to because that pain you can't quantify it. Like if he feels, he can say that he feels super guilty, but you don't
get
know
what you're
that.
saying. Let me give you two scenarios. Let's say I have a kid that crashed the car because they were doing something utterly irresponsible, and they were belligerent about it. And I show up to the scene, they're like Biff on Back to the Future. McFly, why didn't you tell me your car had a blind spot? I spilled beer all over my good suit.
Okay, now you're assuming like the way that I'm approaching the problem. Like you roll up on this situation and be like, you okay? Everybody okay? Okay, good. You're going to pay for the damages to the car. And here's the thing, Ben, like if he feels bad, great. That'll help reinforce the lesson. What also is going to reinforce the lesson is that actions have consequences, whether you intended them or not. If you clip the back of that guy's car and the cop showed up, you'd be like, well, sir, I'm super sorry. It was totally an accident, and I feel super bad about it. Oh, well, I'm sorry. The other driver feels super bad about it, sir. We're going to let him go.
Well, obviously, all the damage is getting paid for through the mechanisms that are in place for that kind of thing.
But you're the one that has to deal with that. All the negative consequences of this kid's actions are falling onto you. That's not fair.
Kinda. I want to talk about something. You're going to want to downplay it. So I'm going to try to say it in a way where I don't know. I don't know how to make it so you can't downplay it. So all of my younger children, my 18-year-old daughter, my 16-year-old son, my 14-year-old daughter, my 12-year-old daughter, were really looking forward to this road trip. The school was just getting out. They want to get in the car. They want to go back to Illinois, see their friends that we just moved away from, see their cousins that they adore that live up there, all those kinds of things. And everyone was super excited. So we had to bring him home from the scene of this accident with an utterly disabled car. And he had to go in, and they were all there. And he had to tell them that their travel plans were canceled.
Okay. So you made him go and own up to it in a public setting.
Yeah, kind of like, all right, well, because of the thing I did, all of you's lives are changed. My in-laws have to find a flight. You guys don't get to see your cousins or go on your fun vacation, and it's my fault.
Okay, no, I honestly, I respect that more than you were giving me credit for before you said it. And that's because that I've been in that situation where you've got to eat crow. And Ben, I don't like the taste of crow. So
yeah, he did a good job. He did. It was a hard position to be in. I knew I couldn't shelter him from it. I didn't try to, but I wanted him to be the one to do it. Yeah,
and as it should have been, because he's the one. That was his fault. Now, before we move on from this topic, I want to address the math for a second. And so it was your second oldest that crashed the two cars, yes? And this,
no, it was the third that crashed two previous minivans.
That was the third? Oh, Jairus is older than Kaya. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So it was the third that crashed two and the second that crashed one. Okay, so between two children, you've got three wrecked cars. So if we extrapolate that vector out into the future, you have what? Two more kids that are coming up on driving age?
I'm teaching the 16-year-old to drive now. He just drove me for 40 minutes today, and then I've still got two younger girls. So
so you've got three. Right. So we're looking at least what if there was
three more crash cars before everybody gets out of the house.
Dude, five. We're talking to five more crash cars. If we got three crashes out of two, and you have three more coming, I'd round that up to five.
My eldest made it out scot-free.
Oh, we're not counting him. He's obviously an outlier on this projection.
You can't do that.
I can't
not count him.
I can totally not count him.
Well, then my one that crashed too is an outlier as well. We'll throw her out.
Worst case scenario, you're looking at 5 wrecked cars. How are you going to handle
it? I don't know, man. None of.
You haven't thought about that, did you? Listeners, I'm watching Ben visibly age before my eyes. Like the stress is getting into him.
Well, speaking of visibly aging, Josh, I just turned 45 years old, which was great for the fact that I had to take my first Air Force physical fitness test in 3 years, and that put me up in the next age bracket where I got a discount on the number of push-ups, sit-ups, and the runtime that I had to get. So I got a 94, so I'm feeling good about that.
Congratulations, but I'm pretty sure the 45-year-old age bracket has to do 3 sit-ups, and then you get a water break.
No arguments. We'll let people think that. And then I got a few gifts. Now, there's one category of gift I got that I've always dodged my whole life. I don't know if you have this or if you know someone who has this, but have you ever known someone that like collects some kind of kitschy specific thing, and then everyone realizes that's their thing, and then whether they like it or not, for every holiday for the rest of their life, they get that thing? I don't know, like little cow hot pads or dishwasher soap holders. Or
We totally did that to my mother when we were kids in school, because she had a cow-themed kitchen. And so as kids, it was just the easiest thing to get was something cow-related.
Okay, so because of the podcast, I started to develop one of those things. Can you guess what it was?
I would like to say high-fidelity audio equipment. That would be super useful, but it's probably not.
No, it's s'mores.
S'mores! Ah, that makes sense.
So one of my kids got me some s'mores cotton candy that they picked up at like a rest stop on a road trip. Like, s'mores. Dad likes s'mores, and they got me this. Oh man, s'mores cotton candy, that's just the worst.
You ate every bit of it, didn't you?
No, it's still sitting in the cupboard. I took like 2 bites. I was like, blah.
Sorry, kid that got Dad the s'mores cotton candy. Better luck next time.
They knew it was a gag gift. But I'm hoping I'm not going to get like s'mores for every holiday from here on.
I will say this is kind of your karmic vengeance for straight up hijacking the podcast for 45 minutes to talk about s'mores against the will of everyone that is co-hosting and listening to the podcast.
Well, I got one other gift that was a surprise and much appreciated, and that is you sent me a magic card. Can I say on the podcast the value of said magic card?
Oh, my spouse is well aware of the value of the magic card.
Okay, good. So there's a card right now that's played in the modern constructive format that's very powerful, and sometimes people play 4 of, and it's so in demand, and it was in such limited supply that the price of it has gone up to $75 each. Ugh. I don't know how much you paid for it, but man, those things are expensive. They've been up above 100.
I paid $75 plus taxes and shipping, yes. And that's why I did not get you a play set. I got you 1. I wanted to get you started, not do it all for you.
You know what, though? I put it immediately into my deck. So if you're a listener and you play Magic the Gathering, see if you can guess what the card was, because I didn't say.
Oh, you didn't say what the card was. Okay.
I have a couple of follow-ups.
Yes. Let me take over the podcast for a second. So I was going back and listening to our last episode because I also enjoy listening to myself talk about things. And I realized early in the episode you were ranting about Top Gun, the sequel, and how amazing it was, and I still haven't seen it. Like you've hyped it up too much. I'm worried about it now. But I mentioned that I had seen the original Top Gun and that I was going to talk about it later in the podcast, referencing the fact that we were going to talk about movies that formed us.
Yes.
But then I never talked about it.
Oh, I should have reminded you.
You should have reminded me. So here's the thing. The movie Top Gun didn't actually do anything for me formatively, but I will never forget it for one reason. And that is, when I was a kid, my dad, like I mentioned on the podcast, had like one of those big screen projection TVs that was like the size of 2 side-by-side refrigerators. But that wasn't the only piece of AV tech that my dad had and was super proud of. He also had the surround sound speakers mounted up in the room.
Those things were massive.
They were enormous. Yeah, they were like what we call bookshelf speakers now. I mean, they were like 18 inches tall and 10 inches wide. They were just gigantic. And he was super proud of the amount of power that he could push through these speakers. And awesome. His favorite go-to demonstration of said powerful speakers was the opening scene of Top Gun.
Of course, they're on the aircraft carrier.
The sun's coming up in the background and everybody's working in their silhouettes. And you see the jets like tooling around on the deck, and then the first one launches and it goes right into highway into the danger zone.
Yeah, and Kenny Loggins.
And he would blast that at full volume anytime he wanted to show off the speakers in his TV. Now here's the...
So it felt like you were on the deck of an aircraft carrier.
Honestly, Ben, it really did. Like it would vibrate your whole body. But this is the thing. So there's 2 scenarios where he would do this. One is when people would come over and he wanted to show off the speakers. 2 is if the children fell asleep watching the TV and he needed to wake us all up as a group.
Awesome.
So I will never forget that opening scene to Top Gun because I've seen it about 30 times. When
so
my dad was
there on the couch, just sleeping peacefully, you drifted off watching, I don't know, The Princess Bride, and then all of a sudden, Da 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 da.
Oh, he would fast forward right to the jet taking off with Kenny Loggins blasting.
Oh man,
yeah, and just the bone rattling and the lung crushing like bass lines that come in. Yeah, I won't forget that.
Wow, awesome.
Okay.
The
other thing that I had that I couldn't believe I let you slide with this last time we were talking on the podcast was I don't even remember what we were talking about, but you.
I do.
Oh.
We were talking about the Hunchback in Notre Dame, and I was trying to figure out which one Danny Trejo had watched in prison.
Oh yes, and there was some.
There was like 100 versions of it in IMDb,
including some adult-rated versions of it.
Yeah.
And then we were talking about that, and then like in a moment of silence, you did the thing that I do, where you just drop in some little like grenade into the conversation.
You didn't hear it,
and I didn't register it until after I was listening to it. You just threw out there, no context whatsoever, Rule 34. And so here's my follow-up question: is do you actually know what Rule 34 is, Ben?
Yes, Rule 34, and Rule 34 is done in that tongue-in-cheek way where you pretend that there's a numbered list of things, and you pick an arbitrary rule, and you just give it a number, like, oh yeah, there were 33 things that existed before this. No, 34 was arbitrary. It was the first rule.
You're completely wrong. But
someone has retconned this, and if you want to pretend that existed all along, fine, but no, that's retcon. Rule 34 was just a number someone made up, but really what it is pretending there's a list of rules of the internet, and the 34th rule is, if it exists, there is porn of it, period, no exceptions. That's Rule 34.
Yes, that is absolutely true. And there is a list of rules for the internet.
I get it. Somebody went back and made up 1 through 33, but when Rule 34 rose to prominence, it wasn't because it was the 34th rule.
Okay, so this is a chicken-egg argument that neither one of us can win. But I'm convinced that there is that the complete list existed first. That was verily put together by the nerds of the frickin' message board days, back when you had to dial up and hand type everything.
This feels like a good opportunity for some research. If someone out there knows, go on our subreddit, reddit.com/r/badatmagic, and give us your evidence that you think when Rule 34 first came out. Did you think that there was a list and it was actually the 34th rule?
Let me make this perfectly clear. Listeners, do not Google the words Rule 34 if you're going to try to research Rule 34. You will be getting some very undesirable links.
You could just look up like list of rules of the internet.
I like this. Let's farm out this question that neither one of us wants to answer to the listeners.
Yeah, no thanks. But since you're talking about Top Gun, I want to tell you about something else that happened. So I went and saw it twice, and then my daughter went and saw it, and she often just has a really unique perspective on things and a brilliant mind. And she was talking to me about it, and she said something that was just, it's the kind of thing that deserves its entire own YouTube video that I'm probably not going to make, so I'm going to say it here on the podcast. And she said, Dad, that movie was fun, and people are talking about how they didn't make it clear which country they were fighting about and stuff like that. She says, but what I think it was is even though it had all the trappings of a military movie, it was actually a heist movie.
Top Gun, the sequel, is a heist movie.
It's a heist movie. So when you watch it, I want you to look for all of the checklist items of a heist movie. You got to get your team together. You got to understand the security system. Everybody has a role to play. It's hard to do.
You have to have some music.
You're going to have a setback.
You got to have a narration of the plan, and while you're jump cutting to portions of the plan being executed.
Yeah. Something's got to go wrong, but in the end, the team succeeds and the heist is complete.
There has to be a double cross, and then later it has to be revealed that the double cross was part of the plan the whole time.
Awesome. So if you've seen it, maybe you agree with me. Or my daughter, I thought it was brilliant. Okay, Josh, let's do some bad at technology. So you and I kind of had a text debate this week, and you brought up an interesting topic that I think we should talk about here on the podcast.
Do you want to talk about the technology itself? Because I thought the meta conversation was way more
I like the meta conversation, but we need to anchor it with a couple of specific examples.
Okay, so specifically what I texted you about was an article that I had read about airless tires, or it was a YouTube video, and this guy did a little 20-minute thing on the pros and cons of airless tires and why they aren't a thing yet. NASA apparently has been using airless tires forever because shockingly. Their rovers go into space where air would be a bad thing. But Michelin and some other big tire companies are now working on the technology actively for consumers, where we could get a tire that doesn't matter how many nails you run over, it's just got no air in it. It's some kind of materials, science, and good engineering that it just works without any air pressure.
Right, but you need it to do all the same kinds of things that a pneumatic tire does.
And this is the discussion, and like this video got me thinking about it, because the guy was talking about like, oh, tires have to have these kinds of structural properties, and they have to resist these kinds of forces in these kinds of conditions. And so he said something to the line of, so far, compressed air is like the easiest, cheapest material we can find that it has the properties that we need for this niche thing that we're using it for. And that got me thinking, is that true? And this is the meta conversation that I kind of want to have about it.
Okay. So I listened to a couple of history podcasts, and one of them I was listening to, one of the mechanisms they use for evaluating this exact kind of thing you're saying is, if we could go back to a point in history and hit the reset button, let all the random things happen, and have a different skewed off timeline 100 times, would this same thing still happen?
Yes. Do we have rubber tires with compressed air inside because we have all determined beyond any measure of a doubt that this is the absolute most efficient and best way to solve this problem? Or is it just...
If we go back to the time when they were transitioning from wooden wheels with steel bands around them to rubber tires 100 times, would 100 times out of 100 we end up with rubber tires with air inside of them?
Yes. Is this the technology, or is this just the technology that we picked?
Yes. I happen to believe, and without any kind of evidence, that that's actually true of this particular thing. It's just the perfect combination of the right kind of materials and, like you said, low cost that just fills a sweet spot here. Another one I like to think of are like weapons technologies, like the cannon. You know, we'd gone from the catapult to the trebuchet, and we'd stressed material science to the absolute limit that we could for physically unleashing a projectile based on tension and weight and gravity and physical movement. And they said, how can we get more energy in a shorter amount of time? We could use chemicals.
Explosives. Thanks, China.
Right. So, and chemical reactions can release much more energy in a much shorter amount of time than kinetic physical potential energy can, with like a stretched back piece of wood or a box full of rocks that's falling downward. And so the cannon overtook the trebuchet in siege warfare. And if you go back in history, 100 times out of 100, you're going to end up with something very much like the cannon.
Okay. Like, I have no response to your cannon discussion, but tires, I don't know about tires, man.
Why? What makes you think that tires aren't the right thing? And if so, what is the right thing?
I'm dubious about tires because not because of tires specifically, not because I have some genius alternate technology that could replace commercial tires as we know them, but because I have experienced several times in my life where I'm trying to solve a complex problem, and then my brain goes down one path, and then just by thinking that path through to any amount of like detailed completion, my brain becomes incapable of thinking along other paths. Anytime I try to think of alternative solutions, it starts sliding back down this slope into the solution that I've already thought of. And so I'm dubious that tires are the best technology, and I'm thinking that maybe this is just a very deep well and has that these rubber air-filled tires has a very strong idea gravity behind it.
Okay, so let me try to do an alternate timeline thing, because we did have a few, like rails. You know, there was a time where rails were actually more in use. Like if you go back to early towns, they built like trolleys everywhere in town with overhead electric lines and those kinds of things. And there are drawbacks to that. But let's say you go back to that time period and like, you know, better than pneumatic tires filled with air is magnetic levitation.
Let's go easier. Something that's more reasonable, like tank treads, like a treaded wheel.
I want to stick with magnetic levitation. I had a reason here, and the reason is that shapes the world differently. Like, let's say from that moment on, we're all in on magnetic levitation, even though it was early on and that was kind of a fledgling technology, but we invest all of our scientific research and our materials science and everything into that, and it becomes really well developed, and we have roads everywhere that instead of being paved with like tar are like whatever could support magnetic levitation, and our cars are all on tracks, and our entire infrastructure is built around that.
This requires some technological leaps and a little bit of sci-fi, but I'm with it. I'm with you. Let's keep going.
Okay, so that's a whole different world. And yeah, there's a lot. You're trading off one set of drawbacks for another set of drawbacks, because now you have to kind of be more restrictive in your construction because you don't have the freedom that pneumatic tires give you. That's really what they give you. So the question is that freedom a trade-off that people are willing to make? If we could go back 100 times, redo history, would we end up with pneumatic tires every time? I'm saying yes.
You see, but that's a different argument than what I'm having. Like, the argument that I'm having is, I don't think back when those were being developed, we gave any other kind of technology a good shake. Like, we went from wooden spoked wheels to then rubber tires that looked almost exactly like the spoked wheel, but just had a compressed air rubber inner tube around the outside. And like, it was just iterations on improving on that. When they went from a stagecoach that was being drawn by horses to the Model T, and they were just translating the wheels one for one, did anybody at the Ford industry stop and say, well, hang on a second, while we're making this brand new form of travel, like, is there anything that we can do to revolutionize or change or optimize for some other scenario? We have the opportunity here, people. We are defining a technology. Let's make the changes that we want. I don't think anybody asked those questions. I think they just iterated on what was already there.
I get it. I see why you feel like that might lead us down the wrong path. Give us blinders, because someone made this assumption at the very beginning, then no one questioned it from that point on, and we were down that path.
Yeah, exactly. And think about any time you travel to some kind of a foreign country or a foreign land, and just like the layout of a town is totally different. Or like, anytime I go to a town on the East Coast, or like Washington, D.C., where they have like developed mass transit. And it's like not even good mass transit, but there's mass transit there. I come from Phoenix, Arizona. Ben, we don't have any form of mass transit beside buses that nobody likes because they're terrible. And so when I go to a city that has like subways or like light rails or park and rides that people actually use, it's mind-blowing to me. And that's just because I've never experienced it.
Yeah, and I spent 5 years in Europe, and I have a philosophy on that, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I think what the physical properties of rubber are, that it's kind of durable and a bit sticky, but also, that it can flex, and then filling it with air allows it to, absorb bumps and kind of overcome multiple kinds of obstacles, variable surfaces and stuff. It just takes what would otherwise be a very expensive in terms of effort, in terms of economic, in terms of engineering, and makes it very inexpensive. Yeah, tires are like bad. Like, they're bad for the environment. They're horrible waste. They're a lot of things.
But this is the thing. You're evaluating that question with the answer already in your mind. So you're
revisionist history.
Yeah, you're framing the question in terms of making it pro tire. Like, there's your
Okay. Here's why I'm doing that. We have so that decision was made like 100 years ago or more. Since that time, it's not like there were alternatives out there that we completely ignored because tires existed. It was like those things have matured a little bit, but nothing has approached it to the point where it could challenge it.
I think you're actually wrong there. I think if somebody in the middle of the height of the automotive industry in America went to a big automotive manufacturer and said, hey, I've got an idea for a new type of interface between the vehicle and the road surface that's going to be better and more durable. I need $50 million to research and develop it. They'd get laughed out of the building. We've got tires. Why am I going to spend $50 million coming up with something that might get me incremental gains?
I get that, but also the fact that there was this inflection point and we went off on it and went all in on it, it also built a lot of infrastructure. Like, let's say the new thing they come out and be like, yeah, this new thing is a great interface, but instead of paving our roads with asphalt, we need to pave them with Jell-O.
No, I do get that. Now you're talking about there's any
so it isn't. It isn't just $50 million. It's $550 billion difference.
Yes. Like, if we have a new tire technology that requires the road to be paved in some kind of asphalt to enable the gravitic levitation, whatever you're talking about before, then that becomes infeasible until cities adopt the new technology and change the infrastructure.
Right. Okay. Here's one I like that helps me understand this concept. What one of the ways that we get around is by extracting fossil fuels from the ground, distilling them, and utilizing them to release the energy a little bit at a time. We turn that into physical movement. It's cars. We use the internal combustion engine generally to take gasoline, add a little bit of air to it, put it inside a compression chamber, and use that to turn it into kinetic motion that we use to generate forward movement.
And a ton of heat, a ton of waste heat.
And lots of heat and carbon dioxide, which are bad side effects. The thing about that is, even though it's kind of hard to extract oil from the ground and refine it and deliver it to the point of presence, all of the gas stations are there, all of the infrastructure is there, all the support is there, that overall right now the cost of doing all of that is relatively low.
Relatively low. Gas is $5.60 a gallon here in Phoenix, buddy. I don't know who you're talking about.
Josh, I lived in Europe where gas was $10 a gallon and no one blinked an eye. So I get that Americans like to whine about this. Fine, you can have it, Americans. You whiny Americans.
Oh, no, let me be clear. I'm not whining about gas prices. I'm putting that as a win in the electric vehicle column because, listeners, I own an electric car and I'm very proud of it.
So electric vehicles are a great example where I think we had this inflection point in the past. When the internal combustion engine was being invented, electric cars existed.
Okay.
And since that time, it was 100 years until they even started seeing widespread use.
Because of electrical infrastructure, because of battery technology, because of motor technology. Yeah, yes. There's the inflection point of all the different things that have to line up to make it feasible commercially.
It took 100 years for all of that to happen. It might have happened faster if we'd focused all of our effort on it. Let's say that I don't know, that the fossil fuels didn't exist in as great of abundance and we had no choice but to utilize electric vehicles. Then we would have dedicated more time and energy to building better batteries and building electrical infrastructure and all those things.
There would be those 1950s cars rolling around with nuclear reactors. Everybody looks at them like, that's really bad for the environment. You should upgrade to the new fusion ones.
You laugh about that. I'll see if I can find a single video for this, but there have been times in the past where new technology comes and somebody really gives it a go. Like if you remember the old Batman show back in the 50s, the kind of kitschy one with Adam West.
Yes.
He had a turbine engine right in the center of the Batmobile, like you have on an airplane.
Okay, so listeners, turbine engines are great for all kinds of vehicles. The problem is they don't produce any horsepower when you first start them up. Like the faster they go and the more air that goes through them, that increases the maximum horsepower that the turbine engine can generate. And so, they're really good, but they've got to get going first.
So we use turbine engines to power vehicles. Do you know what kind of vehicles we use the turbine engines to power?
M1 Abrams tanks.
Tanks, yes, yes. But back in the 50s or 60s, General Motors Corporation produced a prototype and then a vehicle that was sold mass market that utilized a turbine engine.
I think Jay Leno has one, doesn't he?
Yeah, it was like a Corsair or something like that. I don't remember, but it had a turbine engine.
Oh man, that probably sounds like a terror and a nightmare going down the street.
Yeah, it makes the sound you think of when you think of a jet starting up. And we joke about that, but for every technology like this, there's either that one thing that's like the killer reason we use it or the killer reason we don't. And with jet engines, they're just really freaking loud.
But undeniably awesome.
Right, but it doesn't matter with the tank. I'm here to crash over something and blow stuff up. Who cares if my vehicle is loud?
We should have a talk about the M1 Abrams. I love that tank.
Okay. Are we done talking about that concept? I like it. We need to name it. It's like the technology inflection point. If you could rewind 100 times history, would the same thing happen? So what would you say for tires? You think it's less than 100? If we could rewind history 100 times to the time when pneumatic rubber tires was started.
Well, you're asking me, what you're essentially asking me is the percentage chance that rubber tires is what comes out of a think tank when you're coming up with tires.
Yes.
And it's not, but rewinding history is different than sitting engineers in a room with no idea of what this technology is going to be for and asking them to design something to do a
I get it. I'm just trying to find a way to grok this, to just understand it.
Well, I thought
some things feel like they're inevitable in history, and some things maybe you're right, that there was just an inflection point where we could have gone down a different path.
I like the idea that this is like Back to the Future, and we skewed off into this alternate 1985 with steel tires. And so I want to make a name based on that one. I can't think of a good one, though. This is the sports almanac of technology or something.
It's funny how things like noise factor into these things.
Everybody hates noise. Noise is dumb.
Right. It's not just that. There's other reasons. Okay. I want to utilize our platform that we have as a podcast to rant about something that I could... I say it here because I know not where else to say it. There is a thing, it's a template that people follow in history that they, in multiple contexts, where they will basically kind of signal a virtue by saying, I don't do the new thing. My wife loves this when people show a photo of like a train where people are commuting, everyone's staring at their smartphones, and they're like, oh, look at them. You know, this new technology has made us so that we don't interact with each other anymore as human beings. So someone made a meme where that's exactly side by side with a photo of a train and everyone is staring at a paper newspaper.
Yeah. No, people have never wanted to interact with other people. This is not a new concept.
Right. But I'm getting back to the virtue signaling by saying whatever the new thing is, I'm better than you guys because you're utilizing it and I'm not. So I'm showing that I'm better than you because I'm not using this new thing that has a negative effect.
Okay.
So here's that template. I see that in my church with the internet and social media.
Oh, is the LDS community just not down with TikTok?
I don't want to generalize in that way, but I have seen people, and in my local area, I have leaders who feel it necessary to virtue signal by saying that they abstain from social media.
Now, are they doing that with the intent of discouraging their followers from being on social media?
No one has specifically done that. But it still has the trappings of someone saying, look at how virtuous I am because I am not descending to the level of the people who choose to do this thing.
I'm not saying that eggs are bad, but I don't eat them.
But I won't eat them.
That's right.
Yes, that's the thing. Here's the problem, and I don't know if I have any people that do that listening to this podcast. Probably because I made a Venn diagram, and the kind of people who listen to podcasts are also the kind of people who adopt social media. These are non-intersecting circles. But
you say that, Ben, but there's social media that exists now that I'm not a part of because I'm too old for this stuff.
I get it. But that's different. Like, I'm not going on TikTok because I think it's annoying and not because I feel like I'm somehow more virtuous than the people that choose to go on there.
If I tried to start an Instagram and generate followers and interest, that just sounds exhausting.
The problem with this is that there's this virtue signaling happening, and I think it's ill-advised or maybe even wrong. Because I don't think social media is a distraction. I don't think it's a temporary fad. I think it's here to stay. And I think that good, virtuous people everywhere with any new thing, whatever it is, should get involved. And if they don't like the way that it's going, instead of abandoning it, they should be an influence for good on it. So here's where it came up. I think between the last two recording of podcasts, there was Mother's Day. And I was on Facebook on Mother's Day. And man, I was just like, this is great. Like, everyone was talking about why they love their mothers and showing photos of them with their mothers. And I felt so uplifted. And I haven't felt that uplifted in church sometimes. And I was on social media. And one of the people that posted was the prophet and leader of my church.
Oh, the guy who doesn't do social media.
No, he's not him, but people below him think that signal virtue by saying that they don't participate in it. And the leader of our church does. And I think there's a confusion there, and I'm ranting about it on my podcast, and that's all I have to say.
All right, or here's my response to that is, Ben, can I come live in the world of rainbows, unicorns, and lollipops that you live in? Like, I went on social media, and it was just such a great outpouring of love. Have you been on social media any other day of the year? Good God, man.
Yeah, I get the stereotype, and that's the straw man that they set up when they say that they're not going to participate.
Well, but at the same time, you also come at it from this whole, like, your just universe fallacy that you have, or the bias that you subscribe to.
I don't think
You're talking about, like, if you don't like the social media platform for its negative things,
make it a better place.
You need to be a champion for good on it. And, like, that's just such a, like,
Josh.
Yeah, if you... Like, you're talking to such a tiny minority of people.
I spent 5 years in Europe, and being over there, social media was my connection to my friends back home. It was the way my parents saw photos of my children. It was the way that I kind of knew what was going on in the world. All right, I want to read you something I wrote.
Oh, but that whole...
This is an open letter to all of my friends on social media. Here it is.
Oh, dear.
Dear friends, I come here because of you. You dreamers who bring hope and optimism. You parents who love your children. You cheerleaders who encourage us to succeed. You lovers who share your passion with us all. You artists who bring beauty and creativity into our lives. You heroes who help and rescue those in need. You connectors who bring us together. You jokers who make us laugh. You givers who make the world a better place. You patriots who remind us of the reasons to be proud. You saints who share your faith. You mavens who make us smarter every day. You listeners who lend a sympathetic ear. You friends who have been with us through the years. You family who fill our hearts with love. You comforters who lift the weary and broken. You crusaders who take on the injustices of the world and inspire us to do the same. Thank you for being my friends.
I just figured you out. Like,
go ahead.
In the middle of that open letter, I finally figured you out, Ben Rich. Ben, you are Guy, the Ryan Reynolds character, walking down the street in New City. There is death and destruction and bad motivation and sunglass people
how are
everywhere.
You doing today?
Yes, and
have a nice
and
day.
You're just like, don't have a good day, have a great day. Oh, these guys in sunglasses blowing everything up in sight. They're the heroes and they're doing a great job. That's you, man. That is you.
Okay, so let's imagine the opposite of Guy. He's walking down the street, and instead of smiling at people and saying have a great day, he's looking at everything that's bad about his world. Focusing on the absolute worst things, feeling loss of hope and despair and anger and frustration. That's not a great place to be either.
No, but for some reason, he still gets on a podcast every couple of weeks with his friend Guy and talks about these things.
I have a friend from college. I haven't seen him in 2 decades. He just finished his residency after graduating from medical school. He posted beautiful photos of him and his husband and their adopted son. And I got to go on there and just see them together and say encouraging things. And he interacted with me and I with him. And even though he's in New York State, I felt like a little bit the same as if I'd been able to go there and be there for the party they held to celebrate his residency.
Well, now you're just talking about the good aspects of social media. But like you're advocating for the elimination of the bad aspects, which that's
not what I said.
Well, in implication, you're talking. What you're trying to say is like, oh, if there's something about social media platform you don't like, try to change it or be an advocate for the good parts. But you're ultimately trying to change human behavior. You're trying to change the human condition, like wanting to rant. Ben, this podcast needs to be ultra positive all the time, and I don't want you to ever rant about anything that upsets you ever again.
Okay.
That was completely sarcastic. There's no way I can adhere to that rule. I wouldn't talk if I had to be positive 100% of the time.
All right, I got another story I want to tell you real quick before we finish and transition to our main feature today, Josh. We had what was a traditional military gathering that we do. You probably remember these, where someone was leaving for another assignment, and we go out for lunch for an hour or so, and to like some mid-level cafe, and everyone orders lunch. We say nice things about them, give them some kind of memento to memorialize their time. You remember these?
I do remember these. I remember attending many of these.
Because of all of the transitions that are part of military life, this is the way that we kind of cope with all of the gains and losses of friends and time together. And even if you don't like somebody, you go through the motions.
I love that's how you categorize this, because I always saw it as an hour away from work and at a restaurant instead, and that was it. Like, nothing beyond that.
I like this because even though you and I have different personality types, it filled a utility for both of us. And so we both went, and you enjoyed it for what it was for you. I enjoyed it for what it was for me. It didn't matter that our motivations were different.
That's a positive externality. Good job going away lunches.
Yes. So we had this going away lunch, and I'll post a photo in the show notes, but there was all of us military around the table. There was one civilian who works for me, but he had salt and pepper hair and beard and a shirt, and he kind of looked like he might have been the one in charge. So at one point, the waitress comes out. I can't remember what her need was. I think she just needed to ask a question about how much longer we were going to be or something like that. And she said, "Who's in charge here? Is it you?" And there was... all the military people and one civilian and the guy that was leaving's kid at the table. And she says, "Is it you?" And he's like, "Not really." There was like at least 6 people at the table to outrank the civilian. But who it actually happened to be was the only woman at the table.
Oh, okay. So
my colonel was sitting at the table with us, and she was actually in charge of everyone in the group. There was, like 17 men and 1 woman, and the woman was the one in charge. So that was a great, it's a Brave New World moment for us this week. And I didn't even think anything of it at the time till later on when my friends pointed it out when we got back to the office. Like, wasn't that great, that moment where the waitress came out and thought he was in charge, but actually it was the colonel who's our... Yeah.
This is one of those sticky situations where you're almost not really allowed to talk about it because it's like, yes, I recognize and understand, like, oh, this, like, you even mentioned the words like Brave New World, that now it's the woman that's in charge. But it's like at the same time, like, that's a good thing. But then the other side of me is like going, yeah,
so
but this...
do we have to reach the point where we pretend like we don't even notice?
Well, but this should have happened in like 1995. Like that's the cringy part of it is that the Brave New World. It's 2022 and we're still considering it the Brave New World. Like this should just be normal.
Yeah. Well, it definitely hasn't reached normal yet because the waitress assumed it wasn't.
I don't know where to go from that. Like anything that I say from here on out is only going to get me in trouble on this topic. So we can go ahead and move on.
Okay. For Bad at Husbanding this week, Josh, I want to tell you a story, and it's kind of a follow-up for something that happened before. So I got home from work one day this week, and my wife was like, "Hi, honey, I'm glad to see you." I'm like, "Great." And I got something to eat, and I sat down at the table, and then she came and sat down next to me and unfolded a piece of paper.
Did she whirlwind slam like a credit card statement onto the table?
It was like that. So let me tell you what happened. She had gone into our credit card account that's linked to our mobile account that is the mobile account that gets all the charges from any like digital purchases I make.
Uh-oh.
And she had tallied up all the money I'd spent in the last 6 months on mobile games.
Oh, Ben.
So, audience, if you've been with us for a while, you know why Josh just double O-bend me. In episode 22 of the podcast, I talked about how when the COVID quarantine first broke out, I spent 30 days on night shift working my butt off like on 12-hour shifts, and I was so stressed out. I installed a couple of mobile games and spent way too much money on them on my phone, but it was helping me deal with the stress.
It would have been healthier just to do meth, but okay, continue.
So that was episode 22 of the podcast. So if you want to hear that discussion, go back and listen to episode 22. I talk about how much money I spent on mobile games. I'm not going to say amounts this time. Not because I'm ashamed. I've shown very clearly on this podcast I'm willing to do that. But I want you as a listener, if you have something like this in your life, to be able to insert your life here.
Tell me, so, just I have to know. It's not 5 digits, right?
I'm going to be coy.
Don't you dare. So, it cannot be 5 digits, sir. You have kids.
I didn't say it was... So my wife unfolds this piece of graph paper and there's, numbers scrawled all over it. And she's like, "There's something I need to talk to you about." Now, I don't know if this is like a area in people's lives where even the start of these kinds of conversations just makes you feel really defensive where you...
Well, it's like an intervention. You're being intervened, Ben. That's what this conversation was.
So let me go back to the Alicia Silverstone photograph. Like, if she brought that up and instead of me going, I want to take our marriage to the next level, so I'm gonna relent here and I'm gonna get rid of this because you suggested it. Instead I said, what, so I just have to erase my past?
Okay.
Like, because I married you, I have to throw everything out that's from my past? Like, this is a rare thing. Maybe I could sell it or at least keep it in a box. Why does it matter to you if I sell it? And then we go off on this alternate path where that's the kind of thing that's happening. I do not like that path.
Okay. But that's the path you found yourself on looking at this piece of graph paper?
No. Sometimes that path requires you to eat some crow. Like you said, it doesn't taste very good. but you got to do it. So I took a deep breath, and she's like, I went on and I totaled up your how much you spent on mobile games since the beginning of the year, and here's the number. And I looked down at the number, and it was about what I thought it would probably be, and it was not pleasant.
Roughly the household income of a middle American family.
It was more than you really would justify spending on an otherwise free-to-play mobile game because you're paying to get ahead and do
free-to-play
extra things. Again, I'll reference you to episode 22. You and I dissected all of the toxic psychology that's utilized by some mobile game providers in order to basically try to get you to spend extra money without knowing you're doing it or whatever. They're just, it's kind of toxic. I felt like I was doing it knowingly, but I had this moment where my wife is sitting there in front of me saying, hey, we need to help pay the kids in college, and we just wrecked the car, and we got we have life sneaking up on us, and you're spending money on nothing, on digital ones and zeros. You're not accumulating anything of value. It's just money that's going down the tubes.
Actual dopamine hits. Again, meth is a good comparison.
Yeah. Probably, other than the getting fired from your job and being addicted.
You can more people are fired from their jobs these days for mobile gaming than for meth, I think.
I wonder if that's true. So I don't know if you ever had this thing where there's like a path you're on and you just feel like, I am on this path. I don't necessarily like it. If one person were to just say to me, hey, why don't you come off that path? You'd be like, that's enough. That's all I needed. I just needed one person to reach out the hand to me and suggest that I do it. I was ready for this. I don't know if she was, I think her bin simulator might have been a bit out of calibration and she was anticipating me to put up a fight. But I just looked at the paper and I looked at her and I said, I love you so much and I appreciate you intervening on my behalf. I'm ready to do this. And I pulled my phone out of my pocket and I uninstalled the games.
Luckily, I had my profile saved on my burner phone out in the car.
And I haven't looked back. I'm going to miss some things about it. I miss kind of that it just fills up all the little spots. I miss all the, like you said, all the dopamine hits that come from the little objectives that you achieve. I miss the team that I belong to. I in the 3 years that I've been doing this, I established a guild of my own where I was the leader and they looked to me for guidance and
Ben, as a recovering MMO addict, I know. I've been there. And I have also been on that raft.
I'm glad you can sympathize with what I'm saying.
I can. And I've been in that drowning situation where you're looking around just waiting for one person to reach their hand out to pull you out of this muck that you find yourself trapped in, that you don't even remember why you started on in the first place. Yeah. So good on you for recognizing that, and good on Alicia for being the better half and like calling you out on this. Now, Ben, before we move on from this topic, I'm going to stop being serious. I'm going to be very myself again. You need to tell me that it was less than 5 digits, because if you spent 5 digits or more in 6 months on a mobile game, I will this week. I will take time off of work. I will fly out to Louisiana and I will slap you across the face.
I don't know if I want to do that.
Okay, listeners, like I'm gonna make him tell me off the podcast, and
I'll
we'll leave the listeners in suspense so they can.
If you want to think I spent 5 figures, great. If you want to think I spent less than that, that's good too. Whatever it is in your life that you needed help with, you know what? You can move on. You can change. People love you. You can be a better person. If this is the push that you needed, I'm giving it.
We had an episode about Danny Trejo actually helping recovering drug addicts, but this is the mobile gaming addiction. That's what gets our outpouring. That's what gets our actual emotional support on this podcast.
Yeah. For Bad at Logic this week, Josh, it's because it's an even number episode, I am going to give a logical fallacy, and the one I've chosen this week is called genetic. The logical fallacy genetic says, judging something good or bad on the basis of where it comes from or from whom it comes. You gave a great example of this, where like if someone tried to cite a fact and they had a link to Fox News, you would immediately reject it. You wouldn't.
I would. So I probably would reject it out of hand. with the understanding that anything from that source is going to be horribly biased towards the position that somebody's trying to argue against from me. But again, that's a fallacy. I am subject to a fallacy. Just because a broken clock is right twice a day. So even if you want to completely discredit a source, that doesn't mean that they've got their facts wrong.
Yes. And I think it's just good to be aware of this bias. Like, you're going to experience that overwhelming knee-jerk reaction of the genetic bias or the genetic fallacy first. Like, you get the thing, you feel the thing, and then you actually, all right, let me think logically. Let me think this through. Is this factual? Is it substantial? Is there a way to validate it? And then you can make an objective evaluation rather than just stopping at that surface level genetic evaluation.
That's the good side of this. Here's the negative, the Josh side of this. Is if somebody sends you something that you disagree with and you reject that out of hand, that's the genetic fallacy. Now, if you can overcome the genetic fallacy, look at the source, and then destroy the argument anyway without using any of the same logical fallacies and using actual facts, you just win more internet points. You've just crushed your competition.
And that's what it's all about.
That
right?
is what it's about, is just beating your opponent.
For bad English this week, Josh, I want to tell you a quick story that happened at a military farewell. In England, they were way different than they are here. They would never do them in the middle of the day. They would usually do them on a Thursday evening because that's when they would drink alcohol.
Thursdays are the new Friday.
Yeah, it was at a bar in Bath, which is a beautiful town. If you're ever traveling to England, please put it on your itinerary. You will not regret it. So we were in Bath in the UK, and I was in this building that was probably 800 years old and had been renovated several times. And at one point I'd had, I'd consumed enough fluids that I needed to use the bathroom. So I went back to the bathroom, and who knows if this is the kind of building that maybe it was predates bathrooms. So when you're in a building like this, the bathrooms are typically not purpose made, and in this case there was a lot of walls and angles, and it had this situation where there were two men's urinals mounted on opposing walls, where if both men were using them at the same time, you would touch butt cheeks.
Oh, okay. That's fun. That's a fun little thing to do with your friends.
Yeah. So then there was another two that were kind of right next to each other. So gosh, this is going to get kind of personal and gross for a minute, but I'm just going to go for it.
Just power through, buddy. So
I'm standing at the urinal, and another bloke comes up next to me and starts using it, and I can tell he's been consuming alcohol. I have not. And I do something that I habitually do. I don't know what other people's habits are, so I'm going out on a limb here. But before I started urinating into the urinal, I spit into the urinal.
Okay. I don't do that, but that is a fairly common thing that exists.
It's just a thing that I do. And so I go and I start going, and then I notice that the guy next to me is staring at me. Like, and just so people know, women that are listening, this is already taboo. Like, you don't stare at the person next to you in the urinal. You pretend they don't exist, and you stare at the wall in front of you.
There's no talking in the men's room. There is no camaraderie in the men's room. There is no eye contact. Like, this is so many rules he's breaking.
So he looks at me, and he says, "Did you just gob in the pisser?"
You made him sound like a soccer hooligan. Is that on purpose?
Yes. And I'm racking my brain, and I did not immediately realize that the word gob was a reference to spitting. And I kind of missed that pisser meant that I was doing. I didn't know what he was asking, but it felt confrontational.
Okay.
Like that my brain immediately was on high alert that this could potentially come to physical violence.
He's going to throw open the door and yell into the rest of the restaurant, "Hey! This bloke just gobbed in the pisser! This
bloke just gobbed in the pisser!"
And then a bunch of dudes are going to come piling in and throw you out.
Yes, like that. And so I kind of froze. Like, I got stiff, but I had to finish what I was doing. And I was like, "Excuse me?" And he's like, "Did you just gob in the pisser?" And I was like, I'm not from around here.
Oh my God.
And I don't really think I know what you mean. But if you're trying to take what I just did as an example of someone that's from around here, it probably doesn't apply. He's like, "Wait till I tell my wife." I'm like, "What?" "Wait till I tell my wife this bloke just gobbed in the pisser. She said this was a nice pub."
Is that what he said?
Yes. So apparently the fact that I spitted into the urinal in the men's room means that this is no longer a nice bar to go to in Bath, England.
Okay, so I have two better responses for you in this situation instead.
All right, good. This is good. So if this ever comes up again, I know. If
it ever comes up again, all right. My first reaction to this is look him right in the eye and just spout out some long Italian phrase that you know.
Sto imparando l'italiano, ma con intensi.
Yeah, with a soccer hooligan, that might have got you punched in the face even faster, but that'll totally work in America. It will shut down any conversation. The other one was just look him straight in the eye and in the same accent, yeah, and then just like put it back on him.
Yeah, gold in the pizza.
What, you don't?
But that made me feel really edgy because for the most part, I felt like I didn't deviate too far from the norms of daily life in England. Like, it's different from us, but they speak my language and I can pick up on signals and cues and stuff. But I never thought like spitting in the urinal in the men's room would be so far out that it would make him break through all the barriers of like talking to the person standing next to you that otherwise are in, walls that you never bring down.
Well, and based on his comments, he's obviously going to leave a terrible Yelp review and never come back to the restaurant with his wife.
Yeah.
That
all right,
place.
So for bad at English today, go up in the piss.
Listeners,
don't do that.
3 months later,
nice pubs.
3 months later, that pub was closed due to a cascade of negative reviews of people talking about the guys that gob in a pisser at that place.
Or they failed their like health department inspection. Someone's been gobbing in the pisser. Close it down.
F. Now, we found the rats in the cheese, but this can't stand.
All right, Josh, so on the Bad at Magic podcast, you and I occasionally talk about the game of Magic, but we do it in such a way that it's accessible to everyone. That's the origin of this podcast.
Is it? I don't think it
is. We were sitting in an airport in Dallas talking about magic, and some woman who didn't know about it tapped me on the arm and said, that was fascinating.
Yeah, but I think the first thing she said was, I have no idea what you two were talking about.
All right. Well, that's a good start. So I want to talk about one of the fundamental concepts at the heart of the game of Magic the Gathering. It's the reason it's lasted for, almost 3 decades now, and it's the reason it's such a great game. And that is the Magic the Gathering color wheel. Or color pie.
Yes. So in the game, mechanically, if you're playing a card game, the game has 5 colors. Okay, there's also gold and colorless, but we're not talking about
You're making
those.
it too complicated.
All right, there's 5 colors. And these colors have flavor to them. Like they feel specific ways. Like they do it on purpose. They create cards and they create mechanics, and everything in the game revolves around these colors being distinct from each other in specific ways. And it permeates everything. Every set has kind of the same, like, they'll have totally different origins and backgrounds and, like, fantasy stories associated with them, but the colors will always feel the same going from one set to the next.
That's what ties everything together. It was a brilliant innovation by Richard Garfield, Ph.D., the designer of Magic the Gathering, to come up with this central heart foundational mechanic of white, blue, black, red, and green, all being the colors of magic that you use to cast spells in this duel of 2 wizards. And then those colors took on identities of their own that transcend the game and give it its foundation. And it feels like the one probably most immutable rule of the game is thou shalt not violate the color pie.
Unless it's cool and specific for the set. Like, there's reasons that they'll break it.
Yes. But for the most part, they remain true to the identities and values and backgrounds of these colors. And like you said, whether you're in a futuristic Japanese-themed samurai world, or you're in some steampunk science fair, or anything in between, they have the same flavor because of their adherence to the color wheel. These 5 colors: white, blue, black, red, green.
Wooberg for all the nerds that are listening.
So what I want to do is just talk about the identity of these 5 colors and then compare them to the real world.
All right. Well, let's go in the proper order, which starts with white. White is the color of law, order, and justice, essentially. If you're playing white cards, you're playing soldiers, you're playing angels, you're playing things that are like the rule of law. They're restricted to punishing your opponents only when they do something bad or something like totally against you. It feels very much like a civilization or a society coming together and trying to rise up above the chaos of the universe.
Yes, white wants peace, and they get it through prioritizing the good of the group.
Okay, that's a good way to put it.
So they establish rules and law and order and moral and civil values. They value religion and organization, military, strong governing body, honor. The best offense is a good defense, and through that they gain peace. But it only exists by everyone cooperating.
Yes. Now, are we done with white? Or are we going to move on? Or
I got a few. I'm going to do this for each of the colors. The strengths of white are that it is organized and it's an effective use of everyone's group. But the weakness of it is that it's inflexible and it devalues individuals. Like they expect people to make sacrifices for the good of everyone else.
Okay. Yes, I concur.
That's white.
Okay. Blue is the color of traditionally knowledge, magic, and like control. Think of like an academic setting. Think of people that are trying to push the boundaries of understanding and just learnedness. And in most cases, they're using magic to further the understanding of the universe that way.
Yeah. I go one step further. I think blue is seeking perfection for an individual and for the world in which they live. They're seeking to perfect it. So they're trying to discover new things and improve things. They're seeking knowledge and they want to control knowledge. They value universities and libraries and laboratories. And that means knowledge is power. And their weakness is that they're reactive, not necessarily proactive. And they're driven to perfect themselves in the world around them.
There's also a very strong aspect of control. Blue people and blue as a color in general wants to control the universe around it through understanding. And this manifests itself in the game by it is the color that by far has most of the abilities that stop your opponents from doing something before it happens.
Yes. Okay. Black.
Black. Black is power, death, and selfishness. Black is all about number one, baby. I'm going to rise to the top. And if I've got to burn the world to rule the ashes, I'm going to do it. I don't care who gets in my way. I'm going to make deals with with literal devils. I'm going to raise the dead. I'm going to slaughter and sacrifice every one of my followers just so I can get to the top.
Yes, but I don't think Black necessarily wants to do those things for the sake of doing them. It's pragmatic. Like, everyone else wants to pretend that they have to follow these rules in society or whatever, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get what I want.
Okay, yes. It is.
I won't be bound by honor or society. I will do the things that other people are unwilling to do, and that gives me an advantage, and I can use that advantage to get power.
If white is expecting you to sacrifice for the community, black is the color where survival of the fittest. The best will rise to the top in pure competition to destroy their opponents.
Yes, and if you didn't rise to the top, it was because you didn't deserve it, or you weren't willing to do what it takes. And the weakness of that is sometimes that doing those things have consequences, and maybe you miscalculated the risks that you took and it caught up with you.
Yes, there are many a player that plays black that ends up sacrificing themselves or paying too much life, and the game is over for them.
Okay, red.
Red is most commonly associated with freedom, random chance, and confrontation. Like, it is like the emotion. Like, this is just raw, pure anger, rage, and feelings, and expression, and art. And, like, this is just all of that balled up in, like, one. Like, this is where you're going to find your...
sometimes even happiness and romance.
You're going to find your warrior tribes of very proud peoples that just want to raid each other and kill everyone. This is where you're going to find dragons living in mountains and volcanoes spewing lava and all that stuff.
Yeah, and they are all about acting, about following your instincts, fire, might is right, a bit of randomness and hedonism. They know what they want, and they're enthusiastic about getting it. Sometimes that's a weakness because they lack long-term thinking. They aren't planning ahead.
If brute force isn't solving your problem, you're obviously not using enough.
And finally, green.
Green, we start to transition into life, nature, and growth. And that's the whole thing. It's forest. It's just... I don't even know how to describe it. I don't like green very much as a Magic player. But the flavor is just that it's just like the animals that live out in the world, and they just want the abundance of growth, like just unfettered, unhindered. I don't want your control. I don't want your rules. I don't want your boundaries. We just want to expand and propagate and be what we will be.
Yes. If other colors are about transforming the world to get what you want, green is about accepting it the way it is.
Nice. That's a good way of putting it.
They don't want to change the world. The status quo is the ultimate form of the world. Natural beauty and order are already here. If you want to accomplish something, use the power of nature. So green's about like big creatures and cooperation of creatures in order to achieve your objectives. Life, community, interdependence, wisdom, the past. They aren't real keen on unnatural change. They resist it, and they don't like disrupting nature. But they use power and community to achieve their objectives. Now, they may be over-reliant on that, and that could be their weakness. That's green.
I do want to touch on, like, those are the 5 colors. And before we move on to what we're actually going to talk about, I do have to say that they mix frequently. There are ideas that the game itself has explored in great detail, where different colors that are next to each other that are like have overlapping qualities can create different effects or manifest in different ways. And then even colors that have opposing ideologies can also pair off to manifest specific ways. And it's always very interesting when they examine those kinds of dualities.
So interesting. So I did some research, and Mark Rosewater, who we've talked about on this podcast before, who's Magic's lead designer and has been since almost the beginning of the game, has written 40 articles about all of the aspects of the color pie and done 38 podcast episodes on it and counting. I doubt he's done. But this is such a rich idea, and it can do so many things. Like you said, there's all of the synergies of the comparisons of the overlapping values of 2 colors. And then there's the enemy, the opposition that comes from like why one color opposes the values and identity of another color. And then when you overlay that on top of a world or a mechanic in the game, it just gives it this richness and depth that is the beating heart of the game of Magic the Gathering.
That's so good. And what's fun about this is because the color wheel is so well developed and it has it's so broadly defined at the highest levels, you can take this idea and you can apply it to almost anything. And Ben, that is exactly what we are going to do here for the next. We only have like 30 minutes left.
Yeah. Okay. So okay, you go first.
All right. So here's what we did. After many a discussion about how this was actually going to break down, both Ben and I came up with a couple of different categories of random things that exist in the world. And we're going to try to categorize them, a handful of examples.
Using the Magic Gathering color wheel.
Using the color wheel. All right. And so I'll go first. And one of the categories that I came up with, because I am an accountant and this is where my brain is at, was government agencies.
Government agencies. I love it. So you're saying government agencies aren't inherently all one color. They're going to be different colors.
Definitely. Depending on their purpose, depending on how they go about their business. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So give an example.
All right. So the first one that I'll say is the IRS.
The Internal Revenue Service.
Yeah, the tax collecting agency in America. Ben, do you want me to tell you what colors I think it is, or do you want to give a crack at it?
So I feel like the Internal Revenue Service is white in that they're about those white values of law and order and justice and the good of the many outweighing the needs of the few.
Okay.
So that's my guess, white.
You're just going to say straight white.
Yeah, just to be interesting, and then you can develop on it.
So I believe that the IRS is white-black. Now, I believe it's white for the same reasons. Obviously, it's a very structured, organized, and bureaucratic agency, so it's got all those white things that want that law and order. But it is extracting money from taxpayers that may or may not actually be able to pay it. And the IRS is completely unforgiving when you owe taxes. But I don't have any money.
Do you feel like that's because the IRS is seeking power?
No, I think it's because...
I feel like it's pure white. Like it's just because they're fulfilling their role in society.
I feel like the fact that they are unapologetic to your scenario, the fact that they will...
Isn't white naturally unapologetic? Like, they don't care. If you're a soldier that needs to sacrifice yourself in battle, then gosh darn it, you do it because you're doing the thing for the good of everyone.
Yeah, but it's... the The IRS
That's not black. That's white.
The IRS is unforgiving. If you owe the IRS from 10 years ago and you haven't paid them yet, and then you get a tax refund this year, you will get a letter that says, we took your tax refund away from you and we applied it to your debt that was from 10 years ago. And they don't care. They don't care what situation that puts you in. They don't care like what that does to you or your family situation. That is 100%
Is white about caring?
I think so. I think there's an ethical, there's a moral impediment to white, that they're trying to be the good guys. And that the IRS they're not the good guys or the bad guys, they just are. And I think that's the black aspect bleeding into the white.
I disagree. What's the next?
How dare you? All right, so next is the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, which is the agency that the U.S. has that does foreign operations to impact...
very different flavor than the IRS.
Very much so. What do you think?
I'm going to say that the CIA is black and blue.
Interesting. I actually categorize them in the same way.
Yes, because they're about accepting the world as it is, seeking power and expanding knowledge.
I see that all about as the blue aspect of that is the control and the information. They're all about trying to get more info. And the black aspect is we're looking out for number one. Like whatever we need to do out in the world to improve our situation, that's where the black bleeds into it.
Yes, if there were cards in Magic the Gathering that were about things like extracting information against people's wills or sneaking into their plans or those kinds of things, they would definitely be black.
Outstanding. All right, the last one I have for government agencies is the Parks Department.
Okay. Like forest rangers.
I don't know the exact name of the department because I didn't do enough research, but there are multiple agencies that manage different parks or forests or whatever.
The National Forest Service or whatever.
Right, the Bureau of Land Management, that kind of thing. I'm talking about
these guys seem very obviously green.
Yeah, very obviously green, but there's also some white there too, I think, because it is still a government agency and there are still about laws that they're trying to uphold or whatever, but it is all about the nature and they're trying to preserve, so there's where the green comes in my opinion anyway.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like the Forest Service is a bit heavy-handed about preserving a particular idea of what nature should be rather than just letting it be itself. Like when they try to terraform things or, change the balance of nature, what animals are in the ecosystem or those kinds of things. Like true green is just let whatever's going to happen.
Okay. All right.
Okay. I added a couple of government agencies myself. So what do you think the Department of Motor Vehicles is, the DMV?
Oh, the DMV. Ugh. I want to say straight black because everybody hates going there. But it's not actually. I think the DMV is the purest form of... it's got to be white. It's just white.
Just comply with the rules.
Just do the rules. It sucks. Everybody hates it, but suck it up. Go to the DMV. I still have to get the gold star on my driver's license so I can travel. I haven't done that yet. I'm loathing having to go do that.
Yeah, yikes. Okay, so then my last one that I gave, and now I feel like I'm being boring, is the Transportation Security Administration, the TSA. Like, are they just white too?
Maybe. It might be white-blue. There's a little bit of, information seeking there. Like, are you a bad guy? Like, are you going to do bad things? There might be some blue in that.
Yeah, they're definitely black or red, or green, but there might be white, blue. Okay.
I hope people are enjoying this conversation as we ponder the different colors of random government agencies.
I think that what this adds to our view on the world is when we look at these things and we try to assign them this color identity, it really has us examine these agencies and say, what are they? What role do they play in our life, in our society? What do we rely on them to do and why? And are they well suited for that? Okay, so let's rewind for a sec. So we described the values of the colors. I've done this in advance, so I apologize that I'm ambushing you a bit. But do you have... Let's pick a Marvel character that we feel is like purely each of the 5 colors.
Okay. That's a Marvel character specifically.
So for white, I chose an interesting one here.
Okay.
I chose Alexander Pierce, who is the executive in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, played by Robert Redford.
As a white?
Yes, absolutely.
That is
Every
come
speech he
on.
gives is a white speech about wanting peace through prioritizing the good of the group over the good of individuals.
He ended up being
Alexander Pierce is pure white.
no. He was.
I get that you think you've set up a false dichotomy with good and evil being tied exclusively to white and black. Brandon Sanderson has a great an order of knights that are called the White Knights or the Order of the White Lotus or whatever, I can't remember, that have this dichotomy where they're adhering to prioritizing the good of the group over the good of individuals, wanting peace above everything, and the things they do are inherently evil. And Alexander Pierce was just like that.
Oh yeah, you're talking about the Sky Crashes or whatever from the from his books, his quintessential series. Okay,
Offer an alternative.
Alternative for pure white.
Yep.
In the Marvel Cinematic Universe or just in the Marvel Universe?
Go ahead, just broader Marvel Universe. I'm only going to quote movies.
Pass. You're kind of ambushing me with this, and there's a lot of Marvel characters.
Okay, I mean, if you just wanted to do it on the basis of like Captain America,
it would be yes. I think
for him,
yeah, Captain America.
But sometimes he is a bit more
red.
red.
He is a bit red with the freedom stuff and the Civil War things. Dang it, you got me on that one. I can't argue with that.
So for Blue, kind of an unconventional Marvel character, I picked Hero from Big Hero 6, Hiro Hero.
Okay. Okay.
He was
the actual robot.
No, not the robot. The kid that made the robot.
Got it. Okay. Actually, he didn't make the robot. His older brother.
He's also smart. He invented the little nanobots that could work together.
Okay.
But he's about discovery and wanting to, prioritizing the gaining of knowledge above other things.
Blue, Marvel Cinematic Universe, Tony Stark, Iron Man, hands down. 100%.
Good. Nice one.
There's no doubt in my mind. Pure blue.
Okay. For black, how about Rocket from Guardians of the Galaxy?
Rocket as a black character.
Yeah. Not really interested in the good of the group, just doing what is good for number one, willing to change alliances, just looking out for number one.
Okay. I was going to go with Ultron. The villain as a black character.
Okay. Yeah. For red, Quicksilver, Age of Ultron.
Quicksilver is okay. Stuff with okay. No, I can get behind that. I'm thinking like different comic storylines that Quicksilver in. I can get behind that. I'm gonna say I can't remember the character Dave Bautista played in Guardians of the Galaxy. That's going to make you blank on the name, too. Oh, this is so bad. We're a podcast about nerds talking about nerd things, and we can't remember this character in the Guardians of the Galaxy.
What is that guy's name?
For some reason, I'm thinking Thrax or something.
Thrax? That sounds good. Drax
the Destroyer. Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Pure red.
And for green, another Guardians of the Galaxy character while we're there is Groot.
I mean, you can't argue with that.
I am Groot.
Groot.
Okay, so back to our categories. You had come up with something else other than government agencies. What's next?
We're just going to go with my categories. All right. So I was trying to be as random as I possibly could, and the next thing I came up with was cooking shows.
You must watch more cooking shows than me. What were the ones you thought of?
All right, so the first one was The Great British Bake Off. And Ben, you have to have seen The Great British Bake Off.
I kind of have. It distinguishes itself from other like elimination-based cooking shows in that they're still kind of encouraging to the people.
It is totally different. Listeners, if you like cooking shows, watch The Great British Bake Off because it's so wholesome. You watch an American baking show and they build this tension and this like it's all about the friction and the competitiveness. And The Great British Bake Off is just about how they're such good friends and they're all just doing their best to try to make a cake.
And I'd say from the episodes I've kind of glanced at, the overriding virtue is about getting better at cooking. So I'm going to say blue.
I'm going to say white blue. There's a very strong social connection with the competitors in that. Where there's times where somebody will finish early and they'll go help the other contestants.
I feel like that's exclusively blue.
That's not exclusively blue. No.
Blue can have camaraderie if it's about the gaining of knowledge.
All right, well, we'll call it blue, blue, white. Like, it's definitely more blue than white, but I'm putting my white dash in there.
Okay.
All right, so the next cooking show I did was Chopped. Have you ever seen Chopped?
No, not at all.
All right,
Don't know anything about it.
All right, so Chopped is a great show if you like cooking shows, because they take 3 people that are professional chefs and they say, okay, you have to make the best dish that you possibly can using the following ingredients, and they give them a basket of random nonsense at the beginning of each competition. At the beginning of each dish.
Kind of like Iron Chef.
Kind of like Iron Chef. They've got less time, and it's I think they start at 4 and they whittle it down to just the 2 of them. And
okay, so Chopped also is a reference to it being an elimination-based contest,
right? And there's
with
not
a prize at the end.
There's not just the 1 surprise ingredients. There's 4. There's 4 surprise ingredients.
Can the contestants do anything to sabotage the other competitors?
Not in this show, no. It's all about what they can make with these ingredients.
Okay, I guess that kind of sounds red. Just do the best you can with the thing that's right in front of you.
You see, I went like green with that one. Because it's like, here's what you have to work with. Make the best that you can.
Okay, I can see that.
All right. So the next show is totally different. This is Cutthroat Kitchen. Have you ever seen this show?
No, that sounds horrific.
This show is the best. Every person on the show, they start with 4 people. They start with $25,000. They give it to them, each one of them in cash at the beginning of the show. And then as the show goes on, like they're told, all right, you're going to make a dish. You have this much time. Get all your ingredients ready, go. And then during the competition, they have sabotages that the contestants bid their prize money on to purchase to give to one of their other competitors. So it is entirely possible, and I've seen it happen on Cutthroat Kitchen, to win, to be the last man standing and win like $200 because you spent all of your prize money screwing over your competition.
Wow, that sounds like the blackest of black.
Right? It's like it is absolutely the blackest cooking show that I could think of.
Okay, good example. All right, so I also was thinking along those lines, and one of the ones I picked was Good Eats with Alton Brown. Have you watched that show?
I've seen it a couple times, and he just kind of goes around and finds the good food.
I have an affinity for that show because it is blue. Like, it is about understanding the science of cooking and what the optimum way to do things is and why it's delicious and the history of it, the gaining of knowledge, and then using that knowledge to do something new and better.
Okay, excellent. I will defer to your opinion on that one then.
All right, and then Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives.
And that's that's about discovery. That seems like a blue and or a red thing where you're just trying to find the coolest places around.
Yeah, I don't know. It does. I mean, I guess if you're like watching, that's interesting because what perspective is it the color from? If you're the viewer, it's like, okay, I want to discover something new. But for what he's actually doing, just going into a drive-in, he never gives like negative feedback. There's a whole webpage I found dedicated to deciphering Guy Fieri's language to try to figure out whether he actually likes something or not, because he's always going to say good stuff, but he has a hierarchy.
Okay. So there's like a 1 to 10 scale of when he says good things.
Yes, and if he says this one particular thing, that's the highest rating he can give, and if he says this one thing, it means he didn't like it. But it's all good. So in that one, I don't know, I think it's kind of green.
Okay.
Just he's going and discovering the world around him, but not changing it.
Can I throw in a last-minute addition to this category?
Heck yeah.
Okay, how about Man versus Food?
I don't know that one.
This one, all right, so it's this random guy. And he goes
wait. Is it like where you go to restaurants that have like a come here and eat a 72-ounce steak?
Yes, he does the diners, drive-ins, and dives thing where he goes to like 3 different places in a town, but then while he's in the town, he also finds the restaurant that has see if you can eat 400 pancakes in under an hour, and he does it.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, that's red.
Yeah, it's very red.
Okay, awesome. That was great. All right, what's next?
Okay, so again, random categories. Next one I came up with was pets. So we're going to categorize the different kinds of pets in the Magic the Gathering color wheel. And the first one, of course, the top of the list, is cats.
Cats. So are we saying the kind of person that has cats, what color are they? Are we saying what color is the cat?
What color is the cat as a pet?
Okay, I don't want to... I've seen a whole spectrum of cats.
Okay.
But the stereotype of a cat is kind of black.
Very much. It's a cat is... I would say a cat is black and red. A cat is very selfish, and a cat is very free. That cat, if you own a cat...
They'll do whatever they want.
They'll do whatever they want, whenever they want to. If you own a cat... basically, it's a tiny tiger that lives in your house. That cat owns the house, and you are its roommate. That's how it views you.
All right. So contrast that with...
The next one, of course, has to be dogs.
Yes.
All about the pack mentality and like we're buddies and partners and we're all on the same team.
Yeah, so dogs are green or white. They're willing to sacrifice themselves for you.
Absolutely. I think dogs are definitely green-white.
Okay, so there's this thing on the internet that I absolutely love, and every now and then someone will catch a video of a cat doing a dog thing, but it's almost like they got caught. Like they don't want you to know that like they're going to stop a little kid from running out in front of a car because it would spoil their image.
That's funny. I prefer the cat comics where the cat is being very passive-aggressive towards its owners all the time.
Yeah. Okay, so dogs, yeah, they're green, white, not any of the others.
I agree. Now I'm deliberately trying to throw a monkey wrench in this conversation when I say turtles.
Turtles?
Turtles.
Turtles don't have personality. Is there a color that's the color of not personality?
That is absolutely not true. I've been at a person's house that told me, oh yeah, I've got a pet turtle. Let me call him. And I forget the name, but it was, for the sake of this, to say, Leonardo. And then he continued with his conversation. I'm like, you just called a turtle, whatever. And we kept talking. And then like 2 minutes later, the turtle comes waddling around the corner.
That's a great story. And that his turtle was named Leonardo. Okay. I don't know, man. I guess turtles are green.
I want to cheat. I want to say turtles are colorless because who knows? Like what's going on in that shell? They could. Actually, have you seen those videos recently where turtles are very racist? Apparently.
No.
Oh man, there's a couple of videos.
Oh no. Okay, yeah, they'll show someone like stand next to a turtle, and then the turtle does the thing where it pulls its head inside of a shell and rams them repeatedly with the shell.
Yes, but it was the videos I've seen more than one where somebody's
the guy put like black tape on his shoe.
Yes, it's like black shoes, and the turtle hates the black shoes, and then he takes the tape off.
Takes the black tape off, and then the turtle's fine with it.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Racist turtles.
Turtles.
Well, I picked pets I'd seen people have that are not standard pets. So one time I went over to someone's house and they had a giant exotic cat. It was a Siberian lynx. Now, I don't know that this is different from regular cats, but that thing felt like it wasn't like a house cat that's going to like sneak around in the middle of the night to get what it wants. It was just like, it was red.
It was yeah, that sounds like an actual predator living in your house.
Yeah, it wasn't good. I don't think those are.
So, do you know many Russian oligarchs, Ben? Like, who are these people that had a wild animal?
It was a bit of hazing I went through, Josh. I'll give you the quick version of the story. When I was a missionary, I'd moved to my second area, and sometimes when you move to a new area, just like moving to a new unit in the military, the guys will send you to get like headlight fluid.
Gotcha.
Or go on a snipe hunt. So they sent me over to the house where the people had the Siberian lynx, and it ran out and attacked me, and I was freaking out.
Did it have like claws and like bit you and stuff?
It wasn't trying to hurt me.
No, it was just a big old cat that ran out
it jumped on me and started licking my head.
No. So it was just super friendly.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Okay. I think we're done with the pet category.
Okay, fair enough. Ben, do you have any categories for this?
Yeah, so I came up with one, and it, like you said, to kind of be a bit random, to just examine things in the world around us and look at the Magic the Gathering color pie, and that is after school or after work snacks.
Ooh, okay.
So, you could come home from work and you would sit down and have a nice bowl of apple slices. What color would you say that would be?
Do you just have sliced apples in your house?
No, I have unsliced apples.
So I feel like if you actually had a bowl of sliced apples, that's got to be a white snack. Somebody had to stop and clean and then slice these apples and then decore them, presumably, and then present them for the good of the community to munch on.
Okay, you changed my mind about this. So if apple slices were white, what is a green snack?
A grapefruit or an orange or something you snag off the tree as you're walking into your house.
Ooh, nice. Yes. Okay, that was a very Arizona answer to that, but I get it.
We don't have a lot of citrus. I don't have any citrus tree. Well, actually, wait a minute. I say that. I do have a citrus tree. I keep forgetting about it.
Okay, so the second one is one that my daughter eats, but I will not, and that is Flaming Hot Cheetos.
A snack food that actively hates you. I feel like this is a black-red snack food.
Yeah, it not only does it hate you, but like it's bad for you.
All I am is artificial preservatives and anger, like on a puff. That's what that is.
Okay, so then what would a protein shake be? Like if you came home and that was your snack?
I feel like you're actually looking for a green snack now because I feel like protein shake is all about the gains. All about those gains, boys. We're gonna
Yeah, but that's blue, right? Isn't it about trying to gain? Isn't blue about gaining?
Blue is about like science and knowledge and controlling the world around you. Green is about the growth. You know what? I can see a protein shake being a blue-green. This is, I want to get swole and be like the apex predator. So I'm going to use science to do it.
Yeah, like amino acids and whey protein and stuff.
And the creatine and whatever other nonsense sciencey words I can put into this horrible drink in my blender ball cup that I shake obnoxiously all day.
All right, what snacks did you come up with?
All right, so for my favorite snack, the snack that hates me, is chips. Like any kind of potato chip snack. Ben, I was hungry. I was peckish while I was making dinner tonight, so I opened a bag of barbecue chips. And I ate 3/4 of the stupid bag. Frickin' chips.
Yeah. I mean, part of that's black and just like, no, I'd say red. Red. That's what I'm giving it.
Red. It is what it is, and it's unapologetic about it.
Yeah, just freedom.
Okay, I get behind that. This next one is going to be fraught with controversy between the two of us for different reasons, and this is peanut butter and celery. Have you ever had just celery sticks with peanut butter smeared on top?
Yeah, I like it.
Okay, so what color is that?
I don't know. I kind of had that as a kid, and it just felt like a staple of my childhood. So to me, it feels in the same category as apple slices. It's just white.
Okay, Ben, peanut butter and celery is the blackest of black snack foods that you can have.
Why?
It almost killed my mother.
What?
Straight up, not even joking. We used to have just a tray of celery and peanut butter in our fridge when I was a kid because they were delicious, and everybody would walk by, grab one on when they were in the kitchen.
Yeah, it's a little bit of protein, a little bit of green vegetables, some dietary fiber.
My mother ate a couple, waited 10-15 minutes, went for a run outside, and had such a severe allergic reaction, and her throat almost completely closed. She had to go to the hospital. They gave her an EpiPen. And then she had one on her for when she exercised for the next 2 or 3 years. Apparently, this is a weird chemical thing that she was told that the combination.
You mean it wasn't just one or the other? It wasn't a peanut butter allergy?
It was the combination of peanut butter, celery, and exercise. Those three things together apparently triggered this severe allergic reaction.
What? Wow, that is wild.
Since that day, I have never eaten celery or peanut butter within an hour of each other.
Huh. Okay. Well, my next category is breakfast cereal mascots.
Outstanding. I don't think we can get more random than that.
So, as a child, as I was sitting in the morning eating breakfast cereal, I'd set the box in front of me and stare at the pictures on it. And the first one I want to talk about is Captain Crunch.
Oh, Captain Crunch has, he should have been promoted to Admiral a long time ago, first of all. Or forcibly retired. But I'm going to say Captain Crunch has got to be white. Got to be a white mascot.
See, I always felt like Captain Crunch was an explorer. Like he was in search of deliciousness, and so he was blue.
But he's wearing the military uniform. He's got the shoulder epaulettes that you see in the old timey military naval garb.
Captain Kirk and Captain Picard were both captains in the wearing rank.
Yeah, and they were military members first and explorers second.
Well, I wouldn't assign them both the same color either.
Oh, not at all. I let's just look at the number of I can't even say the right word. How many foreign alien women did Kirk sleep with versus Picard?
3. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So Captain Crunch, I say blue, you say white.
Yeah, I think he's a military man. You think he's an explorer. That's interesting.
All right, my second cereal mascot was Sonny the Rabbit, who's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Is that a rabbit? Why am I thinking it was a bird?
He's a rabbit.
Okay.
No, it was the trick. It was the bird on the Fruit Loops box. He was Sonny the Toucan.
Oh, okay.
We're not talking about that one. We're talking about Sonny the Rabbit, or whatever. It's the Toucan. Toucan Sam. Not Toucan Sam, Sonny Rabbit. He was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and he was always trying to get him, and that dude was just red. Straight up red. He was just crazy to get chocolatey cereal.
I feel like the commercials I saw, he was trying to kick the habit, and then these kids were enabling and like giving him the cereal, and then he would go absolutely psycho. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, he's still red. Hedonistic. That's definitely a red value.
Yeah, okay. I'll stick with that. Red sounds good.
All right, my third one was Tony the Tiger, who wants you to eat Frosted Flakes.
Because they're great.
Because they're great. And he was always telling you how they're part of a balanced breakfast, and if you eat them, you can be strong like him.
I love the balanced breakfast because then they show a plate of bacon, a plate of pancakes, like a bowl of fruit, a giant glass of orange juice, and then like 3 multivitamins. A
little bit of cereal.
Yeah, and then like this tiny bowl of Frosted Flakes. Like it's just sugar, guys.
Which is mostly sugar. Yeah, okay. But Tony the Tiger himself, I'd say he is green. Yeah, green.
He always came across like on those sporting commercials like he was trying to help you out. Like he was the coach that was trying to get the kids to go.
Just achieve your potential.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I'm going to go green-white on that one just because.
Okay.
Yeah. He's probably not. He's probably also, because of his sugary cereal that he's dealing as a drug, he's probably also a super black like breakfast cereal mascot. But that's fine. We can move on from that. Oh, okay. So I've got one for you. How about Lucky, the leprechaun from Lucky Charms? They're always after me, Lucky Charms.
Yeah, Lucky felt like he didn't want us to eat cereal.
He didn't want us to eat his cereal.
Because he wanted it all for himself. So I'm saying he's black.
Yeah? Okay.
Yep.
I can see that. He's always trying to escape from the children. Like,
he's not trying to sell you cereal. He doesn't want you to have it. It's his cereal.
I'm going to say black-blue because he was also always discovering new marshmallows that ended up in his cereal somehow.
I did enjoy when that would happen.
Yeah, go into like a magical cave or something, and the crystals would like somehow catalyze into marshmallow bits. And fall in the cereal.
I like it. He wanted to make it better, and he doesn't want you to have it.
Yes. Perfect. All right. The last one is the Tricks Rabbit. Silly rabbit. Tricks are for kids.
Ooh, that's a tough one because, like, he wanted the tricks, but he never got them, and that was the worst for me. I'm realizing the psychology behind all of these things. There was the cereal mascots that were trying to give you their cereal. There was the cereal mascots that were trying to tell you it was good for you. There was the ones that didn't want you to have it, and all of it was psychology to get you to buy their cereal. I want that cereal because he doesn't want me to have it. I want that cereal because he wants me to have it. Like, which worked? They all worked. I hate them all. The Tricks Rabbit never got the cereal, and it made me so mad as a kid. If I ever met him, I would give it to him. I think he was red too, though.
Okay. I don't know. I feel like he was always pursuing it for himself, and he just never could achieve it. So I also think he was black as far as the color wheel goes. He's just bad at being black.
All right, my last category here is auto manufacturers. I want to trim this one down a bit, but I just wanted to give a few. So you just recently had some problems with your car that's manufactured by Volkswagen. What color would you assign to Volkswagen?
Oh, Ben, you've totally got me on Volkswagen. So I want to say, every time I'm in there, I'm looking at all their propaganda and their posters and talking about how cool they are and the engineering and stuff. And so I'm gonna say 3 colors. I'm gonna totally deviate from what we've been doing.
Okay.
I'm gonna say they're blue because they're super big on their innovations and how they're constantly trying to push the envelope and all the history of all the crazy things that they've done. I'm gonna say they're red because they're also trying to push this mentality of like, oh, we try to make vehicles so you can go out and do the things that you want to do and we'll fit your lifestyle however it's gonna be. And then I'm gonna say black because they've screwed me too many times already not to be super selfish.
All right, good. I can't one-up you there. But I was trying to think of examples of the whitest white or the bluest blue. So the one that I thought of that I think is the reddest red is Ferrari. Like, they're the last holdout in the performance automobile that is never produced like a mass market SUV or something like that. They're just hedonism in a vehicle.
Damn the costs. We're making this ultra awesome thing and you can just suck it.
Yep. Yeah. It's just, we're doing the passionate thing that makes you feel good.
I get behind that, yeah.
So what color is Tesla?
Ugh. Okay, so...
Are they green?
Let's talk about Tesla, and let's not talk about the owner of Tesla. I will say that Tesla is absolutely blue in that they were kind of the first mainstream electric car manufacturer, like the first one that you would think of. like the Chevy Bolt, and like there was some one-offs that existed that didn't get anywhere near the publicity that Tesla did. Like Tesla is the first company that came out and said, no, we're going to make like this new technology a real thing. So I'm going to say that they're at least blue. There might be some green in there if they cared about the environment, but I don't think they actually do. So I'm just going to stick with blue.
Well, that's an interesting thing you're talking about, the difference between their declared values and their observed values.
I think we've talked about that before. Like their
Yes.
declared values is like, oh, we're such a great, wholesome, good for the environment, but our cars still cost $90,000. So that.
All right, which ones do you have?
Auto manufacturers?
Yeah.
All right, so I tried to deconflict from your list, which was extensive, Mr. Car Nut. The first one I had was Mazda with an asterisk. I specifically want to talk about the Mazdas they produced with the rotary engine.
The Wankel rotary engine.
Yes.
Okay, what an interesting piece of engineering that thing is. We could spend a whole time discussing it, but basically it's just a really innovative and ultimately flawed way of producing energy with gasoline.
Now, is it flawed because it's actually not as good as normal internal combustion cylinders, or is it flawed because they haven't had enough engineering like put into it?
It has a fatal flaw, and they've tried to fix it. I would say that that's blue. They're trying to question the status quo and do something new in the name of knowledge and innovation.
And because of the knowledge and innovation, I say it's blue. But because they were trying to break out of the mold of the rest of the industry, I'm also going to say they're red.
Okay.
All right, the last one I have is, just because it wasn't on your list, was Volvo. Kind of almost a fringe market manufacturer now. Are they still making Volvos?
Yeah, they're Yes, they are. They're no longer making Saabs. We won't talk about that. I know a lot about that, but Volvos kind of cultivate this image of producing the safest automobiles on the road.
Yes.
To great effect. Is that white or is that green?
I think I feel like that's got to be white, doesn't it? Greens, there's nothing natural about cars in the first place.
It's blue in that they're kind of innovating and trying to come up with new and creative ways to make cars safer. Like, hey, this is a car that even if you don't react fast enough, it will.
Okay.
Or, hey, we're the first ever car to install these 3-point harnesses or airbags or all those things that they've done. Those are all innovations. That's blue. Helping make the road a safer place for everyone, that's white.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll say blue-white for Volvo.
I agree.
All right, speed round. Frat party.
Red-green.
Big Mac, the sandwich from McDonald's.
Oh, black-red.
Carrie Fisher.
The actress or like
Princess Leia from Star Wars.
White, red.
Flip-flops.
Flip-flops. Green.
A giant redwood tree.
Oh, well, obviously green. Get out of here.
A smartphone.
Blue. Blue, black. That sucks way too much of my time into it.
A traditional wedding.
Oh, traditional. Black.
You said it's prom for grown-ups. Come on.
All right. Yes. It's definitely like white, green, red.
Okay. Fight Club, the movie starring Brad Pitt and Edward Norton.
Red, green.
The Nike Air Max 95.
Oh, Ben.
You own a pair, and you know more about this than most people.
Because I'm friends with you. But I'm going to say red. You want me to say blue, but I'm going to say red.
Yeah, I would say it's green, blue. Spoilers for Star Wars.
Spoilers for Star Wars are absolutely black.
Okay. Great. That was good time. We will revisit the color pie in the future. We've kind of laid down the ground knowledge here. We'll always refresh when we talk about concepts like these. But people, if you're interested in trying Magic the Gathering, this underlying idea that Josh and I just talked about how there's these values and identity that gives things meaning and substance, it's woven throughout the game of Magic the Gathering and what makes it a great game. For next time, episode 75 in the Bad at Magic podcast. It has been a long time since Josh and I have done a Q&A episode. So I am going to burn up the social media, send out some emails, some messages, go on the Facebook page, go on the subreddit, and solicit you guys for questions. So if you have questions, you can contact us on social media, reach out, and send us some questions that we will queue up for answering on episode 75 of the Bad Magic podcast.
Excellent. If you like what we do, consider sharing us with a friend. If you like us, maybe your friends will like us too. If you really want to show us some love, consider taking your phone out of your pocket right now and giving us a good review on the podcast player of your choice. Ben made a very adamant request for that in the last episode, and we stand by it. That's a huge thing that you can do for us. Lastly, if you want me and Ben to talk about stupid nerd things that are so niche that you're not going to get it anywhere else, consider becoming a patron on our Patreon page.
And until next time, try to be a little less bad at magic.